Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome back. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 199 of the news.
And of course, we're going to be reporting on the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine, and the Russians are on the run. The Russians are on the run so quickly in most areas that it almost seems that the Ukrainian army is trying to chase them down, and they're not even fighting them at this point. We're, of course, going to be covering that tonight, as well as a couple of other things, but I do want to cover something that I've finally gotten to today. Now, a lot of y'all have always been saying, hey, dude, get a Patreon. And I've always not wanted to get a Patreon, but I got into a Discord call on my server, and I got my forehead kicked in by about 20-something people demanding that I make a Patreon, and so I finally made one. If you want to click on the link in the description below, there is a Patreon there. I came up with something for the Patreon, but now we have one of those. Of course, just real quick, I want y'all to know this. Now that we've entered Patreon territory, now there is room for the fake account to run around and go, hey, support my PayPal or something like that. I am only going to be posting the link to the Patreon in these descriptions of these videos. If you see them anywhere else, do not click them, because I will never be putting this anywhere else in a comment or anything like that. It will always be in these stream descriptions. And so if you see it elsewhere, don't click on it and report that to YouTube, considering that that's probably a scam. So with that, let's get right into the news tonight. And so with that, we're getting to the Kharkiv area, where we have seen some pretty good stuff today. Starting off, the Ukrainians appear to be racing down the Russians across this entire area, as they're pretty much just literally chasing them. Here's one of the videos of Ukrainians on the side of a road firing at the Russians with the BTR-4. You hear the Ukrainian soldier yelling, and you see the BTR-4 further down the road.
Ебать, там дадим посадки! Такая ебашь! Ебать, ебать!
This guy is yelling a lot, but also an interesting thing. Unfortunately, I can't tell you what he's yelling, so if anyone would like to provide translations in the live chat, please feel more than free to. It will only help out what's going on in this video. But one thing that's always interesting to note about armored personnel carriers over the entirety of this war, and probably armored personnel carriers over the entirety of history that no one's really noticed, is that the rear doors on this BTR-4 are wide open. Both of them are. The reason for this, as far as I've been able to see, is because a communications link by headset or by radio in between the BTRs, or the Russian equivalent of an APC, and the soldiers is non-existent, and so they just open up the doors of the rear of the APC so that way you can just yell into it and yell in commands to that crew if you need to. It's a really interesting thing that I've seen over the course of this war from both sides, and I think it's worth observing because it's something that's not really covered a lot in war, and also a little bit of a weak spot, because if you're able to get a machine gunner looking at the rear of this BTR, you could fire into it, which is, of course, not necessarily a great thing. But anyways, we're going to let the video continue.
Ебать, ебать!
The BTR is now firing.
Давай, давай, родики, ебашь!
So everyone's telling me that he's yelling at the BTR to fire, and it sounds like every time he gets done yelling, they fire off a few more rounds, and the guy starts cussing them out again to keep shooting.
Андрюха! 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 Жека, я шатуха, плюс, блядь, там де дими були, посадку хай ебаша, в посадку!
We now see the Ukrainians talking over the radio, but we've gotten into slideshow mode for some reason on this video. Kind of odd. We'll give it a second to try and load a little bit. All right, we're going to let it continue.
Там де дими кидали, посадку чуділя, туда хай ебаша, туда!
Now hear him discussing over the radio, but once again, he's having a little bit of a moment to buffer. For the purposes of watching this video uninterrupted, real quick, I'm actually going to bump down the graphics quality to 480, so that way we can at least see this video uninterrupted. So we're going to let it continue. You hear the BTR-4 firing again, but once again, the video has locked up. Having a little bit of a lockjaw here with the video, unfortunately. I'm not sure why, because it was loading just fine, but now it isn't. So we're going to bump it down to 360. And see if that'll help it. No? Very interesting.
360 didn't help it?
360?
Try 240.
240, that's the lowest we can go. If we were limbo dancing, this is all the way on the floor. I think this is a problem with Reddit, so give me just a second and click refresh. We'll let this refresh real quick. And then we'll skip forward to that part in the video. I don't know why it's doing that. That's really weird. Alright, so we're going to skip forward to that part of the video, which is about right here. We'll click play. Come on, video. Work with us. There we go. And then it stopped. Well, now it's loading again. It looks, for some reason, this video is a little sketch, but we're going to let it continue. We see the Ukrainians still on the berm of the road as the BTR-4 fires into the distance. With that, that's the end of the video, but it's a very interesting look at Ukrainian forces in the Kharkiv area as they continue to push the Russians back and, of course, use some of their almost famous at this point BTR-4s. If you don't know anything about the BTR-4 and its history and its service life during this war, it has been an incredible vehicle the entire time. The BTR-4 is an improved variant of the older BTR series of Soviet armored personnel carriers. We can actually see a picture of the BTR-4 right here. Among some of the upgrades that they've given to it is doors for the drivers. They also have some pretty nice windshields. And I think if we look at a BTR-82, we may see something similar, but not quite. I'll show this to y'all real quick. You can see on a BTR-82, once again, largely on the same chassis, although there is a couple of distinct differences here and there. You can see that there is a door for the infantry compartment where the infantry can unload. You can also see portholes on the side of the BTR-82, which are not present on the BTR-4's hull. And you can also see that the BTR-4 has some greatly improved visibility for the driver, and what I'm assuming would most likely be the commander, as the BTR-82 only uses periscopes, and the BTR-4, of course, uses windshields. A far superior visual system, if I must say so. On top of that, as far as we know, the BTR-4's gun is more powerful than the Soviet or the Russian counterpart, BTR-82. The BTR-82 uses, let me make sure to get my information correct on the caliber of that gun right there. It uses a 30mm 2A72 automatic cannon, or a 2A42 according to the Wikipedia post, which is the exact same as a BMP-2. The BTR-4, on the other hand, uses a 30mm autocannon, so the exact same caliber, but as far as we know, this one does have a higher, I guess you could say, power shell, or more velocity. It's frozen a little bit. Looks like OBS is reconnected.
Oh no, I'm seeing people say, uh-oh. People
Okay,
putting
we're
F
back.
in the chat.
We're alive! We're alive. We made it through. Yeah! And Matthew's vocal cords just blew up. Sorry about that, everyone. It looks like we had some connectivity issues, but as far as I'm seeing right now, the stream connection is fine, and we are still alive. So, with that, getting back to what we were saying about the BTR-4 and the BTR-80, or the BTR-82, and also Russian bots are coping right now. Not only are they crying about what happened today, they're crying about what's happened with the DDoS failing. Anyways, back to what we're talking about. The BTR-82, I do not think, is as capable as the BTR-4. And so we can see that the Ukrainians are, of course, using them in their advances, and hopefully to great effect. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the next video, where we can saw the Ukrainian soldiers in recaptured territory singing the anthem of Ukraine. Here's the video. And of course, this is obviously not copyrighted. This is just something someone filmed, and no single artist holds any kind of copyright on this. So it is fair use in public domain. Here's the video.
Man, the violin is a nice touch.
Yeah. And that is really sweet. Video loop there for a second for some reason, but that is incredibly sweet to see. Ukrainian soldiers have blown through the Russian lines, have retaken this land, and now wave their flag back over the fields that are Ukrainian and are also singing the anthem. A really nice tribute, and of course, a huge honor for these soldiers to be able to do so, considering that this area of Ukraine has been under Russian control ever since the very opening weeks of the war. With that, we're now going to be moving on into our next video, and this one's got to be the craziest one I've seen. A Russian tank was driving down a road, and the offensive is moving so quickly by the Ukrainians that it had no idea that it was driving straight towards the Ukrainian convoy. And the tank's loaded with soldiers, and so it drives through the convoy, it starts getting shot at, guys start falling off the side because they're freaked out, and the tank still is rolling at full speed right past this Ukrainian convoy while being shot at the entire time. So with that, Here's the video. This thing is insane, and it speaks for itself. I can't play the music, sadly, but I am going to ramp this thing up to 720 so that way y'all can see it in high definition, as the Russians were caught lacking again. So with that, here's the video. When you see the Russian tank racing down the road, also notice all of the infantry that's on it. So, what's about to happen here is that this is a Ukrainian soldier, and he's like, oh crap, that's a Russian tank. So he starts shooting at it. And guys get freaked out and they start jumping off of the tank going 40 miles an hour. And it's driving past a Ukrainian convoy. I don't know how in the world they were this incompetent to not see that there was a Ukrainian convoy further down the road, but this tank driver meant he was not stopping. Hell or high water, this tank was going to keep going. He keeps on flooring it, past the convoy. It's still going full speed. You're watching this in real time. Cornered too hard, slipped right to a tree.
Oh, man. And were those people on top, right?
Those were people on top. There were still some people clinging on when that thing hit the tree. And then the tree fell right oh my god, that thing drifted.
This is some
into
Wile
the
E.
tree.
Coyote type activities.
Oh my god, look at
Dang.
Oh
Fell
my
right
God.
on top.
And then that tree fell right on top of the remaining people that were still on that tank, probably, with all of its weight and force being brought on it and the tank. With that, that's the end of the video. It is probably the craziest thing I have ever seen over the course of this war. And, God, I mean, that was just sheer incompetence on the Russians' end. To not even communicate with their forces to see where the Ukrainians may be and just drive full speed past a whole Ukrainian convoy. With that, that's the end of the video, and I hope y'all enjoyed that quick little look into how well it is really going for the Russians. We can also see that they're pretty worried as they've now brought in artillery to try and slow the Ukrainians' advance and are panic firing at them, hopefully trying to hit something, although Ukrainian units are moving so quickly that it's probably not hitting anything. That's the end of that video showing the Russians panic firing some artillery, and moving on from there, we can then see a abandoned counter battery radar from the Russians in this area. Of course, the Russians have been retreating at practically full speed. In fact, they've been retreating so quickly, they've hardly had time to gather up their equipment or anything. They're just turning around and starting to run. And so they left behind an incredibly expensive and high-tech Russian counter battery radar that can pick up things like artillery shells, MLRSs, from multiple miles away. Here's the Ukrainian inspecting this counter battery radar intact. Everything is in perfect working order, it seems. Everything. They just left it behind. He now smacks some kind of flap on the side of the vehicle. And when you see, of course, Russians... wait a minute, hang on, let me get the right voice. Russian forces, of course, habitated in this area, as we can see the refuse and fecal matter of the Russians. Observe the left-behind MRE package, showing that the Russians once were in this area.
Ага, аку мы поснимали. Так, нам срочно аккумулятор. И у меня свой собственный зоопарк.
Now you see the Ukrainian rummaging through it. Oh, look! Oh, someone got elaborate. We know that the Russians don't do this normally. They painted a star onto the plate carrier. Is that nice or what, Matthew?
That is really advanced for them.
That is really advanced. If y'all don't know, the Russian painting industry is far behind everyone else. To do this in a factory, you're talking about 5 million rubles, which is about $5 American, or the price of a Coca-Cola these days. And we know the Russians don't have the money for that. So what you're looking at here is a Gucci plate carrier for the Russian forces. And of course, it probably only has a steel plate inside of it that's about, like, paper thin.
Дорогие волонтеры,
Now see him. Jesus! Are you kidding me? This looks like something from Buried Alive.
волонтеры,
What is that? Filth! You have to walk through filth to get into the counter battery vehicle. This is a counter battery vehicle, y'all. This is one of Russia's most expensive vehicles. This thing probably costs, at a minimum, 15 million US dollars to produce and then field. And the Russians treated this thing like a garbage dump, and there's garbage all over the inside of it.
можете заказывать кому что. Вот будет вам тут для музеев полно. Ну а зоопарк мы будем эксплуатировать уже.
When you see more garbage. Oh, look! Fishing gear. That's what you do with a counter battery radar is you go fishing.
Бонус мой.
Also, they got some tushonka, which is canned meat.
Так, а подожди, а что случилось? Так что-то поломали, что ли? Россия, Россия, в этом слове.
If y'all don't know that song, I've actually heard it before. It's called like "Glory to Russia" or something, and you can actually hear the guy singing the lyrics here really quickly to the very opening of it. So I'll let y'all hear that again.
Россия, Россия, в этом слове. Та-ра-та-та-да. Россия, Россия, в этом слове три ошибки.
Oh my god. The Ukrainians are doing so well at this point. They're just goofing on the Russians. This guy's even starting to sing a Russian patriotic song as he picks up left behind coats with victory ribbons on them and such things, and just throwing them to the ground. And so I agree with this guy. Россия, Россия, это слово не будем силы. But with that, that's the end of the video, and it's hilarious to see that they've captured a counter battery radar entirely intact, and of course with the typical Russian refuge inside the vehicle. And so with that, we're going to be moving on into the next video from the Kharkiv area, if you want to even call it the Kharkiv area. It's more so turned into the Kupiansk and Izium area. But we're going to be moving more towards the Izium direction of this massive pocket now. And we can see that the Russians were obliterated on the southern side of it today, more towards the Izium area. And so, of course, I have to mute this video. It does have music in it. But we can see the typical Russian Toyota Hilux, once again out of battery power, being pushed into the corner of the woods. The Toyota Hilux is a very disturbed creature. I'm not going to do that one too much. I don't want to overdo that voice. But we can see that they pushed it into what appears to be a garage of some kind, and of course the Ukrainians are on top of it and barraging the place into oblivion. It looks like a lot of people may actually like that voice, oddly enough. Because some people are like, yeah, that's great, keep it up. But anyways, we can see the artillery coming down on the position. Of course, the video freezing up a little bit. I hate it. I hate this, y'all. I can't stand when it does this kind of stuff. But when you see the Ukrainian artillery amongst the slideshow is fairly accurate, and it appears to be hitting directly onto the Russian position. Matthew, could we get a poll up on that real quick?
Oh man, Enforcer, I just put up a different one.
Never mind. We won't run that poll for now. As soon as I said that, I saw that one pop. I was like, forget it. But we can see the artillery still coming down on the Russian positions incredibly accurately. Almost all of the rounds we've seen so far have fallen into the small radius in this area. The artillery is now consistently hitting where that Toyota Hilux appears to have been pushed into the garage, and now a small fire has broken out, and it seems to be not in the same area as the garage, but somewhere else. That artillery shell appears to hit the side of a house and cause the fire. pretty quickly, actually, which makes me assume that there may be ammunition or gasoline being stored there. I gotta say, I love the look of white smoke in the sky, especially when it's coming from a Russian position, because that lets us know that they are getting floored. We can also see that the fire in the woods is picked up pretty well, and the Ukrainians might be able to get a nice stew cooked up. Or if y'all know this specific video from YouTube, a beef stew, a corned beef stew. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm sure a lot of people in the live chat know exactly what I'm saying. We can see more artillery rounds hitting once again in the same area. And I would have to say that the Ukrainians have thoroughly hit these Russian positions, because we can see that multiple fires have broken out and continue to burn all across the area. That fire's gotten pretty big. I mean, like, that thing's gotten massive. But with that, that's the end of the video. And once again, the Russians near the Izium direction have been obliterated by Ukrainian artillery once more. With that, we have one last video. What in the world? We have one last video from this Kharkiv, I guess you could say, bulge at this point, more towards the Izium direction, where we can see that the Russians are desperately trying to slow the Ukrainians' advance with an MLRS barrage. But I just don't think this will work at this point. The Ukrainians have so much momentum behind them that thinking that the Russians can stop an army that's just covered 40 miles in 2 days with a single MLRS barrage, it's a little far-fetched, to say the least. But here's the video. We can see some kind of vehicles out there that look like they may have had a heat signature, but now the MLRSs are raining down, and I've got to be honest with you, now that the MLRS barrage is coming down, I don't see any sizable Ukrainian forces in the distance that they could be hitting. Nothing showed up on the infrared camera, as we see here, that is hot enough to either be the engine of a car, or a vehicle, or the heat of a body of a soldier. I haven't seen any of that yet. We can see the drone now looking around. It appears that the Russians are trying to find something to look at to parade about and say, look, we did something. But I just don't think there's any way that they can paint this to be good. They've lost, as far as I've been able to tell and collect information on, something like 400 to 500 square miles of ground over the past 48 hours. And that's just not good, no matter how you try and paint it. And so with that, when you see that in the Kharkiv area, especially the Kharkiv bulge from Kupiansk to Izium, things are not going incredibly well for the Russians whatsoever. In fact, it looks like the Ukrainians are still advancing with the rapidity and speed that they had in the first 2 days. And it appears that somebody is starting to notice. It appears that the Russians are starting to see that the lies that they've made for the past 6 months are unraveling in front of them. They don't really know what to do anymore. In fact, this isn't even anything that they can spin well. And so with that, here's a video from Russian State TV today where one of Russia's largest mouthpieces in support of the war is visibly seen nearly having a breakdown on TV today about what's going on in the Kharkiv area. And so with that, here's the video, and y'all are gonna love this. This is great. So here it is. You can actually see the subtitles as well. So I'm gonna let the video play.
Самая разная информация поступает вот в последний там час-полтора, и в том числе во время нашего эфира. Я просто невозможно что-то сейчас комментировать, да, мы не знаем какой-то официальной информации. Я просто хотел сказать, чтобы, ну, все, кто верующий, наверное, чтобы молились за наших парней, я в том числе, это, ну, нет слов, просто молились за то, чтобы держались за наших мужчин, которые там сейчас находятся. И победа обязательно будет за нами, жизнь все расставит по своим местам. Это была программа «Есть тема», меня зовут Антон Анисимов, всем пока.
He's freaking out. You can tell he doesn't even know where to go with this. Just look at his body language now he's talking. This guy is freaked out. He's like, how in the world do we spin this story? So he's just sitting here and he's like, I mean, if you're religious, like, just pray, like, I don't even care what kind of religious you are, just pray to somebody, pray to any god you can find, because nothing is stopping this Ukrainian ass beating that we're getting right now. We're getting beat. And he's just trying to keep it together, but the whole entire story is falling apart in front of everyone's eyes, and now even the Russian news can't keep up with how to spin this lie. They can't. There's no way to spin it in a good way. And even our favorite guy that I rat on 1,000,000 times a week, he's even seen freaking out on his own show. Now, this is a bit of a longer video clip, but these people on this show are not taking this well. And of course, I'm going to have to read off all 5 minutes and 40 seconds to y'all, because about half of the subtitles at the bottom of the screen will be cut off due to how we edit the video. So, with that, let's check this out. We wish courage to our warriors, who are indeed doing very important work. They are resisting an enormous horde. Wait a minute. Hey, Matthew, have you noticed that now that they're losing, they're saying that the Ukrainians are an enormous horde? However, they've insisted the entire war that they have the numbers advantage, and they're just going to roll over them with the numbers alone?
Yeah, it's crazy. They think their people are that gullible.
Yeah, they've literally just changed the Russian army from being the biggest, most massive army in the world to now it's outnumbered and they're fighting a Ukrainian horde. Come on. That has been trained in the West. There is no other way to describe that. As you understand, it was a troubling night. Just like all of you, I'm waiting for reports. It's understood that everything is difficult, but it can't be easy. This is a special operation. People are dying. We understand how it is. This is a serious, difficult situation. Ukraine's armed forces went on the offensive as a result of difficult battles. There is information that Russian units have indeed left Balaklia. Fighters of the National Guard left the area. They've left the city in an organized manner, via the corridor on the outskirts in the east. And they did such a good job, just once again, keep this in mind. They did such a good job with their orderly retreat. They, in fact, were able to cover untold amounts of ground. It's the fastest withdrawing force we've ever seen. They covered 50 miles in 2 days and didn't even get, they were moving so fast, they didn't even get shot at by the Ukrainians much. For its advancement in the direction of Kharkiv, Ukraine's armed forces used the units that have been trained in Berlin. The news is troubling. The information is inconsistent. Ukrainians are celebrating their victory. Zelensky's social media account posted the footage of the Ukrainian flag in Balaklia. What's going on with Balaklia? What do you know? Good day, Olga, and this is apparently the commander of the Akhmat division, who may be in the area. So we're now gonna let this play. Just keep that in mind now. We've had a little bit of a character switch here. We've gone from the lady to this guy. Honestly, I had no idea. Well, that's very assuring coming from a military commander that's supposed to be in the area. How's it going? I have no idea. That Balaklia was the capital of Russia. What? Or that Kupiansk was turned into Russia's capital. Who knows what they're celebrating over there?
We have no idea, right?
Yeah, we have no idea. It's not like they're celebrating the liberation of Balaklia and Kupiansk. It's not like they're celebrating the liberation of their own people or anything. That's such a stupid argument. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like winning towns that aren't the capital of a country aren't worth celebrating. We saw the Russians celebrate the capture of Mariupol, Severodonetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, Melitopol, and also a couple of the smaller cities in the north like Konotop. And we saw them celebrate every single one of those, and I didn't see them pulling out this stupid line of logic when they were celebrating those of, it's not the capital of Ukraine, so it doesn't matter. But now that they're getting beat, and they're getting steamrolled, now they're going to go, what are the Ukrainians celebrating for? It's just a couple of small towns. Neither Balaklia nor Kupiansk have an extraordinary importance. I don't know about that. For the Allied forces. Nothing extraordinary has happened. God! Oh my God! The stupidity in this. They just lost over 500 square miles of ground north of Izium. Izium's been cut off from supplies now, except for one road, and it's a small country road that leads to Izium. And they're saying that nothing major has happened. Izium, which has literally been the key city of the entire northeastern area of the front, is now under jeopardy of being overrun and captured by Ukraine, and nothing major has happened at all. Nothing. That's the stupidest line of reasoning I've ever heard. Kupiansk undoubtedly represents a tasty target for Ukraine's armed forces. It is an intersection of railroads and highways. It is a logistical base which provides material means, practically to all our troops. Well, I'm glad that this guy says something that makes sense. Located to the west of the river Seversky Donets, so the stakes are very high. There is another offensive in the southern direction, so it's not completely correct to pontificate that this is no big deal and strategically not important. Unquestionably, that is not quite correct, is of an exceptionally high importance for supplying all of our troops in that region. This man right here, the guy with the white hair, he needs to be given a medal for saying what needs to be said on Russian TV. Like, guys, this stuff isn't unimportant. The entire Eastern Front could be in jeopardy because of this Ukrainian advance. They could cut everything off. At least this guy is smart enough to at least say that on TV. But knowing Russian TV, this guy is probably the punching bag for everyone else. And they're all about to be like, oh, you stupid old idiot. It's not like that. It's like something else. But we're going to let the video continue now. It's very troublesome. Everyone is terribly stressed out. We hope and believe we won't allow any panic, wishing success to our military. It's absolutely correct that the Russian Federation is gradually abandoning the common approach towards North Korea and developing better relations. We need to form an anti-imperialist front, because we're not imperialist by invading another country and trying to impose our will and install a fake government for our interests. That's not imperialist at all, so we need to ally with the North Koreans, because we're not doing anything imperialist to Ukraine, as they would call it in the Soviet years, because a coalition of 53 countries is fighting against Russia. Man, what the West is doing to us right now. The West says to us, oh, yay, we got the nut. We finally got to the nut, folks. So here we go. Strap on the tinfoil hats because you're going to need them. This guy is about to say some of the stupidest, most unfiltered stuff you've ever heard. And I've already seen it, and I can tell y'all it just gets worse. The West says to us, we'll come armed to the teeth, but you come naked. If you don't want to come naked, then you are weak. We should be taking everything. We need to cause them problems, using the kinds of weapons they're unfamiliar with, including those from North Korea. What in the world?
Oh, North Korea is the haven of secret weapons. I forgot.
North Korea, Russia's had everyone fooled all along. North Korea is actually where they've been developing all of their brand new weapons, and the North Koreans have just been holding them for safekeeping this whole time. Oh my God, we already looked last stream at the weapons that the North Koreans use, and most of it's World War II era or early Cold War era, so the West would only be unfamiliar with those weapons because we had never faced a military using such an antique variety of garbage. I don't quite understand how we're waging this battle. I'm watching what's happening in the Kharkiv region. I won't panic. Wait for the Defense Ministry's update. But I really don't understand this. We see how the entire West is supplying weapons. There's not a single NATO, or not even a NATO country, which isn't shoving something in over there. We're dealing with a military-industrial complex, with a combined budget of over $1 billion per year. No, over $1 trillion per year. I have a personal request. Let's be tougher. They won't understand that we're serious until we punch them in the nose. Oh, come on. You can't, God, you can't even take over Ukraine. And Ukraine is a great country filled with brave, incredibly well-trained, and a well put together fighting force. But the Ukrainians on a world scale are still a small drop in the bucket when in comparison to the British, the Germans, the French, or the Americans, just standing alone on their own. And so if they can't even take on Ukraine, how in the world do they think they'll just imagine up a punch in the nose for a country like Germany or the United States? And on top of that, they all respond in kind, so it wouldn't just be one at a time, it would be the entire NATO alliance. Not everyone realizes the paradox of this situation. There is an enormous confidence in our victory. But in response, there should be real achievements. When you're certain that we have to win, when you're certain that our pursuit is righteous, and then you see hiccups, how can that be if we're in the right? Social tensions could rise up not because of the masses opposing the military operation, but because they might ask, why isn't it more active?
Oh, that's why.
Yeah, it's not because they see that they've been lied to the whole time. It's just because there isn't enough victory. We just need to make more victory. Where is our victory? Where is the advancement? I'll respond to all the nervous ones at once. Let's wait for the official statement from our defense ministry. This special military operation is a difficult man's job. Our heroes are doing what they can. Nothing is ever simple. The front line can move back and forth. What matters is how it ends. And let me remind you that Iosif Vissarionovich Stalin called for the ones who panic to be shot. Boy, isn't that inspiring words to rally the men. If you're not freaking out, then you're good. If you're freaking out because you're getting steamrolled, we're going to shoot you anyways. Honestly, at this point, why in the world would anyone fight for Russia? Because if you freak out because you're getting steamrolled, you get killed. If you stay because you're getting steamrolled, you're killed by the Ukrainians. You're going to be killed by either one at this point. So why in the world would you fight for them? I wouldn't. I would start running for the hills, or I would surrender. And so with that, you can see that things are starting to fall apart on Russian state TV, and the reality of how poor off the Russian military really is in this part of the world is starting to show even on their television. And people are starting to panic and really start to take this thing not too well. And so with that, that is the end of our very first news segment of the night. We're now going to be moving into the location unknowns, the Kharkiv area and the Chuhuiv area, and also cover the remaining news and the northern Donbass. But before we get to all of those, we have to take a quick pause to address some polls and also read and answer 3 questions from the chat. And so with that, take it away, Matthew.
All right, folks, for our first question segment, we have a whopping 2 polls to address. And the first one said, are the Russians starting to fall apart due to Ukraine's recent advances? It looks like 76% of you said yes, and it does show. 21% said somewhat, and only 3% said no. They are status quo. Now, I would definitely follow then that 76% that said yes. It does appear that Russia is starting to really falter. You can tell by their talking heads on the media. They are definitely getting concerned. They're not even sure how to respond to this anymore. But Enforcer, what are your thoughts?
I have to say the Russian army is completely collapsed in most of the country. The only area it seems that they're giving up a good defensive is in the southern front, and that's because the Ukrainians haven't done anything there. We know that they're getting pushed back in Kherson. We know that they're having a very difficult time in the Donetsk region. I did hear today, however, that there was a town south of Bakhmut. Actually, correction, I've already adjusted this on the front line a long time ago. The Russians took the village of Kodyma today, but that's the only thing across the entire front line that they were able to take, and they have been fighting over that village for about the past 2 to 3 weeks, and the Ukrainians reported that today, and so we do know that the town's been taken. However, while the Russians took one village south of Bakhmut, which is still not even close to threatening some of the major highways towards the rear of the city, which keep it alive, the Russians have lost something like 40 villages up here in this area, and around over 500 square miles of ground. When you put that into perspective, the Russian army is just completely falling apart. They have no ability, logistically, to support a massive attacking force anymore. We can see that based off of how they've been operating for the past few months after the Battle of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. They possess the trained troops to effectively defend anything. That's why we saw that the Balaklia area was lost within the course of 2 days. And so I would have to entirely agree that the Russian army has completely fallen apart, and it's showing very clearly at this point. The cracks are visible. And so with that, we are on to the next poll, and I hope that addressed that one pretty well.
All right, and the next poll asked, Do you think the Russian population will buy into the recent state media propaganda? 53% said yes, they will blindly follow Putin. 33% said maybe, this might do it. And 14% said no, they will not fall for it. And some people noted that this doesn't take into account the people that are kind of forced to think this way. However, this is more of a poll about people's personal views instead of what they have to express in public to avoid like persecution and punishment. Personally, me, I would say that this might do it. I would fall in that 33% that said maybe, because there are people that are very fond of the Soviet days in Russia, and there are people that are also not falling for the propaganda, and they know it's wrong, but they're scared to speak out about it. So, Enforcer, what are your thoughts?
I think if I had to give an actual answer to that, I feel like I also have to fall within the 33% that say this might do it, because the attacks in Crimea, the Russians actually got through those pretty okay. I'll give that to them. They didn't really cover them. If they did, it was very small, and then that was it. And that was over. The Russian tourists came home freaked out, traumatized, because they watched multiple attacks happen everywhere they were vacationing. But beyond that, we didn't really see a lot happening in the background from that. However, for the first time ever, we're actually seeing Russian state TV sound panicked, and there's panicked voices there. So this might do it. There is a change going on in the Russian state TV, and even they don't even seem that confident anymore in what's happening in Ukraine, especially considering that the Ukrainians have taken more ground over the past 2 days than either side's taken over the past 2 months nearly. And keep that in mind when we talk about this. This amount of ground is massive. There's no other way to explain this. If we measured this out with a ruler, and let me do that real quick, actually. I'm kind of interested now. So, about to here, and then up here, and then we go down here, and there. And we go back down to here, and then we go out here, around the town, and then down. I'm trying to get a very rough estimate. Sorry, everyone. I want to make sure it's about as accurate as possible. All right, we click save. This area right here that the Russians once controlled before this counterattack, which is now highlighted in some of a darker field, this area in total is around 837 square miles. So it's actually well over the estimate I've been giving this entire stream. And it gives you a really good idea of how poorly the Russians have done. 837 square miles is no laughing matter, and it's nothing that can be shrugged off. Covering that kind of ground, if we were to put that into perspective in another country, this would be huge. Let me take this, actually, and let's move this entire thing to France. And I'll show y'all how big this area really is. So let me just drag it all the way across to Normandy Beach. And we're going to move it right down to about there, and it actually fits. And so you can see right here, that's the amount of ground that the United States would have had to have covered within 2 days of landing on the Normandy Beach on June 6th. And so with that in mind, real quick, now that we can actually see this in France and get a pretty good comparison, let's pull up the map of France on June 8th, 1944, and let's see how far the United States had made it inland off of that beach invasion. So, let's see if we can find a good picture here. It looks like we may have a couple, but I'm not sure if they're June 8th. Let's see. This is June 8th. That's right there, this little tiny, kind of a semicircle, is how far the U.S. had made it off of the Normandy Beach in 2 days worth of fighting. This, on a map, is how much ground the Ukrainians would have made over the course of 2 days of the exact same kind of fighting and trying to cover the exact same amount of ground, pretty much. You can see that it's far larger, and it puts into perspective how quickly they were moving. And also I can see that some people said we had airborne too. That is true. We did drop airborne behind the lines, and I think they are represented here. You can see a couple of unit markers that are behind the lines, but they have no front line shaped around them. And also, thinking about that also puts into perspective how easy it may have been for the United States and the British, who also airdropped soldiers into northern France, for them to push into these villages, because by and large, the airborne units were holding a couple of them, at least some of the larger ones, like I believe the airborne. Now, I don't want to say that, because I know that the airborne got a hold of Saint-Lô and held on to it until they were relieved, but I don't know about Caen. I think Caen may have been fought over by the airborne, or at least they had a foothold there, but I can't really tell you for certain. And then, of course, there's a whole bunch of other stuff on June 6th that we could talk about forever. But still, you can see the kind of progress that the Ukrainians have made in 2 days versus the kind of progress that the Allies had made in 2 days by the time of June 8th. Let's see if this map. This is actually the 12th of June, which shows the red lines. Wait a minute, the red lines are where the German defensive positions were. The blue lines were where the Allies were by June 12th. And you can see that they had still hardly moved off the beaches at that point. And that's honestly incredible to think that the Ukrainians have covered this amount of ground. And so in that perspective, I think that this single instance may be the one that changes the Russians' minds, because there's no way that you can fib that kind of ground being lost in 48 hours. And so with that, we are on to the next... Oh, well, we're on to the questions now, I believe. And also, I hope you all enjoyed me weighing in on that poll.
And yes, that was our only 2 polls for the moment, so we're moving on to our first Super Chat question, which is from Sylvester the Cat, who puts in a very generous $160 donation and says, "Hello, Matt and Enforcer. Regarding the Russian forces north of the river by Kherson, how many are there? Short of a Dunkirk-style operation, it seems likely that many of them will end up as POWs. What are your thoughts? And thanks, from Loose Spring Tanker."
Well, I gotta thank you so much for the massive amount of support, Sylvester the Cat. That helps this channel to keep on running incredibly well, and so thank you so much for that. Now, to answer the question, unfortunately, we have not really been able to assess Russian force numbers all too well on the stream, at least the news I've been collecting. Only thing we can do is rough estimates, and I believe, based off of the last rough estimate I got in this area, which may be well off, the Russians supposedly had something like 23,000 men north of the Dnipro River. And if that's true, that's a pretty sizable force, especially in modern terms, and that's around 10% of the entirety of their armed forces that would be on the northern Dnipro side. Now, with that in mind, and also considering that all of the bridge crossings have been destroyed along with the ferry, and that's going to be incredibly difficult for the Russians to try and get any kind of additional ferries into the Kherson area, considering that you most likely have to have them set sail from Crimea or Sevastopol, or all the way from Novorossiysk in Russia, around the Crimean Peninsula, up into the Dniprovska Gulf, and then float them past the Ukrainians, up the Kherson River upstream, which will take an additional amount of time considering they're having to fight the current, and then to Kherson to try and start evacuating these soldiers. That is almost an uphill battle that they could never win in terms of trying to conduct an evacuation. So with that in mind, I don't think that these 22,000 Russians could really be saved unless if they were to try and attempt to cross the nearly destroyed bridges without any equipment or any vehicles. They could possibly do that, but I'm highly doubtful of any kind of a I guess you could say Dunkirk-style river crossing trying to evacuate the soldiers, because considering the obstacles that force would have to face trying to get up the river, that would almost be impossible. And if it was even achievable, the casualties that they would take attempting that would make it unlikely. And so with that, I hope that answers the question in every regard. Once again, it's a pretty rough estimate with the force numbers, but considering the actual side of trying to evacuate the soldiers from that area of the river, I'm fairly certain that would be something the Russians wouldn't even attempt to do, because the casualties of that naval relief force would be so high. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well. And thank you so much once again, Sylvester the Cat, for helping to keep this channel running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And yes, big thanks to Sylvester the Cat. We do appreciate it very much. And moving on to our next Super Chat, we have a $50 donation from Gary Robbins, who says, "Slava Ukraine, the last 2 weeks have been great, but I am over the moon about the last 2 days. Any suggestions about what Americans and Europeans can do to help?"
Well, I thank you so much for the support, Gary Robbins, and of course, you've been around forever. You're one of the old guard of the Lee Spring Army, and to answer that question, well, actually, to address that statement you just made before the question, these past 2 days have been incredible. I never thought we would see this until mid to late October, and we're seeing this in early September. The Ukrainians are moving far ahead of the schedule that I even laid out, and a lot of people were saying that my timetable was too optimistic at that. And that's really crazy to think that over these past 2 days, we've seen the Ukrainians flip this war on its head. Now, to answer that question, the United States and Europe, beyond sending more aid packages, there's not a lot more we can do. Of course, we're still going to be running fundraisers for nonprofits that are over there operating Ukraine and helping out the civilians. But beyond that, I can't think of anything else that a normal person in Europe or the United States could do at this point. Perhaps go over there and volunteer. The Ukrainians could always use more volunteers, although I've heard that they're overlogged with volunteers and they really don't have anything that they can have them do anymore because there's just a massive number of them. I don't really know of anything we can do. So I think at this point, we just have to sit back and watch as the Ukrainians obliterate the Russians and just cheer them on from here. I think that's about the best we can do. So with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well, Gary Robbins. If anyone has any ideas, please share them in the live chat because I can't think of any anymore. We, of course, have... We've really won the battles we were fighting here on the home front. The United States even just gave the Ukrainians another $2.7 billion aid package just not too long, well, literally just yesterday. So in that regard, we see that the United States is still providing aid. So here in America, we have won that battle of making sure that the United States will constantly provide military aid and arms. It's just that there's not much for us to do. Honestly, I can't think of anything more for us to do because that was our whole goal and we've achieved it. So I don't really know. But with that, I hope that answers the question, Gary Robbins, and thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we're on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the next bit of news.
And the final super chat of this segment goes to Hillneck304, who puts in a very generous $40 donation, but he does not leave a comment. So, Hillneck, as always, we do appreciate the support very much. Even though we would love to make a comment on a statement or a question you'd like to send us, we do appreciate the support.
And also, I do thank you so much for the support, Hillneck. Has Hillneck supported us before?
I believe he has one time before.
If you have, thank you so much for the support. And if you haven't, thank you so much for supporting this channel. It helps us out a great deal, and of course helps this stream to keep on running. And of course, I cannot state enough how much y'all help this channel to keep going. We don't run ads on anything except for our videos, which, just letting y'all know, we don't run a lot of ads on those, so it's not like it's just... it's not like it's raining money or anything on those. We just do that to try and improve their analytics because apparently YouTube pushes videos they make money on. So I was like, well, I guess at this point we lose if we do, we lose if we don't. So I was like, we'll just run the ads and see if YouTube will push the videos a little bit better. But with that, I thank you.
And real quick, Enforcer, I want to point out, folks, that we are at 98,000 subscribers. So we're only 2,000 away from reaching 100,000. So we're getting super close to that legendary landmark of 100K. So if you are new, or if you've been here for a while and hasn't subscribed yet, please do so, because once we reach 100,000, we have something big planned.
And also, yes, we do have a face reveal planned at 100,000. And also, real quick, to go back to what I was saying, so we rely on support like from you, Sylvester the Cat, Gary Robbins, and you, Hillneck, for helping this channel to keep running. Y'all are the only thing that helps us to keep going. And of course, we set up, not to try and plug this thing again, because, you know, we're not into plugs or anything, but we did set up the Patreon. So if you were one of those people who kicked my head in to have this Patreon, please make sure to go over there and support it, because it helps me to keep this channel running. It helps me to focus on more videos, and of course helps the thing to keep rolling. And also, I did it for y'all. So with that, I hope that does address the final super chat of this segment, and I thank y'all all so much once again for the support. And we're now going to be moving on into the next bit of news, where we can see in the location unknowns some more interesting stuff has been happening today. Starting off with a return of Saint Javelin. They returned from the very beginning of this war, and they are back to knock out more Russian tanks. Here's the video.
На нас движется две БМД или танка, сверху десант. Сейчас будем по ним работать, как принял.
And there goes the Javelin. We can hear someone laughing in the background like they went insane. Did you hear that, Matthew?
I heard somebody going hysterically crazy in the background.
Yeah, I love it. Then we see in the distance a little flash, which is the Javelin hitting the vehicle, and it's another tank knocked out. With that, that's the end of the video, and it's great to see that Saint Javelin has made a return to these beautiful fields of Ukraine. With that, we're now moving on into the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see a Stugna attack, and of course, everyone's favorite. Here we can see the Russian main battle tank grazing in the field. In the late autumn, it must get ready for hibernation, and so it feasts upon the wheat. But of course, there's a creature lurking in the darkness. The Stugna. The Stugna is a very rare creature, but an incredibly deadly one. It fires a venomous rocket called a Stugna missile straight into the side of the T-72. We can see the creature now lash out at the T-72 as it's feasting upon the grain. And of course, disaster strikes. We can see the Stugna looking even closer at the T-72 as its vicious venom lashes out and destroys it. Another meal for another hungry Stugna. With that, that's the end of that video. It's great to see that the Ukrainians are still wiping out the Russians with Stugnas, even on the offensive. Really cool at that. With that, we're now on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where you can see a drone attack. You know, interestingly enough, Matthew, the David Attenborough impression, from what I'm seeing, is incredibly well liked. That's actually interesting to me because
Yeah, it's pretty on point, Enforcer. It's as close as it gets.
run a poll on that. I'd like to see people do enjoy that, because if so, that might be something I do on Patreon. Maybe, you know, like, I don't know. But with that, we're gonna show this video of the Ukrainians using a drone. So with that, here's the video. When you see a Russian right there, the bomblet hits, and it looks like they got a Russian. Well, he actually had a nap, I'm sorry. So with that, that's the end of the video, and it's good to see that the Ukrainians are still using the drones to pretty decent effect, even in the offensives. So with that, we're on to the next one, where we can see that a drone actually got a double. It was giving out naps like there was no tomorrow. And so here's the video of that. I'm going to show that to y'all real quick, real short one. When you see the Russians walking across the road, and we can see two soldiers take a nap. With that, that's the end of the video, and it's great to see that the Ukrainians are, of course, still using the drones to great effect. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the next one. And where's that poll, Matthew? Thank you. So now we're on to the next one, where we can see a close call. This was a close call. This is a Ukrainian tanker's camera on top of his T-72, and what y'all are about to witness is the closest near miss that I've ever seen in this war from an ATGM. And so with that, here's the video. When you see the camera looking into the distance, and oh my god, what is that? That, right there, each little frame, is a Russian AT missile.
Whoa. That is crazy.
And guess what, Matthew? It misses the tank so close, it actually rocks the camera. You can see that right there. It didn't hit, it didn't explode, but it passed by so close that I was able to rock the camera just by, I guess you could say, the wake of it disturbing the air alone.
I'm shocked that camera was able to catch it because it was moving so fast.
I would have to honestly say so as well. It's actually crazy to see how quickly it was moving. It was like on screen for 3 or 4 frames. Let's count them. Let's see. Oh, wait, well, actually, you can see it from a pretty good distance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It was on camera for 6 frames. And assuming that the common camera these days records in 60 frames a second, that thing was only in frame for about 1/10 of a second. And that tells you how fast that ATGM was moving, and how the Ukrainian tankers in this tank probably didn't even have time to process what happened until later when they were looking over the footage. And also, one other thing I'd like to note, Matthew, is what kind of Three Stooges bull is this? The Russians can't even hit a tank that's stationary. It's not moving. They just miss it.
But unfortunately, they weren't aiming for the tank. They were aiming for the trees behind them.
Oh, yeah. It's a sign of goodwill.
Remember, they hate the trees.
Yeah,
yes, exactly.
They hate the trees, y'all. So they weren't going for the tank anyways. They were going for the trees. The tank was just in the way, and they were luckily enough to pull the missile away where it would miss. So with that, that's the end of that video, and once again, another sign of Russian incompetence. We're now moving on into the next one, where we can see, ooh, the Spetsnaz got wiped out by the 108th separate brigade, separate battalion of the 10th Brigade. So here's the video. And also, I love how the Russians, you know, like usually special forces are supposed to be discreet. You know, you don't know where SEAL Team 6 is or the SAS or the SBS. You never know where they are. They just pop up places. But the Russians love the Spetsnaz so much, they give them cars and trucks that actually have Spetsnaz written on the front of them with a massive Spetsnaz emblem on it. How stupid is that? We can also see some special camera effects being done. And now we can see that...
Was that on purpose?
Yes, it was. Now we can see all the Spetsnaz vehicles on fire. Toasty. And it looks like a lot of people really do like the David Attenborough accent. More than 85% of y'all do, but a decent amount of those who like it wanted to be used with discretion. So we'll make sure to use it with discretion. But if you join the Patreon, I think that'll be one of the things that I start throwing in the Patreon is the occasional impression here or there. So, you know, for those of y'all who are just huge aficionados of all the impressions I do, you'll be able to probably find them there. So with that, we're going to move on to the next video. And it's beautiful to see, isn't it? I hope you all agree. It's wonderful to see that the Spetsnaz is also getting the shaft from the Ukrainians, and they just roasted every single vehicle that was here. Oh my god. You know, no one can get a break in the Russian military, and it's almost like they deliberately make it that way. Who in the world put Spetsnaz on the front of a vehicle? That would be like SEAL Team 6. Images. That would be like, let me try and find a vehicle that the SEAL Team 6 is using in one of these pictures. Oh man, there's a lot of pictures of SEAL Team 6 without a vehicle in it. Who would have thought? Here we go. You see how this Humvee doesn't have SEAL Team 6 written on the front of it? Y'all notice that? That's because you're not really supposed to know where special forces are. They're supposed to be a little discreet. You're just not really supposed to have an idea of where they are. But of course, the Russians, oh, look, Ivan, we have Spetsnaz right here. Look, we paint it on the hood so that way no one else can tell it's Spetsnaz, but a drone looking right down at the truck. So with that, that's the end of that video, and it's great to see that Russian stupidity really does pay off for the Ukrainians in the end. With that, we're now moving on into the next bit of Location Unknown News, where we can see a pretty cowardly Russian tactic, and unfortunately, I can't tell y'all how this actually ends. We can see that at the end of the video there was a gunfight, but we don't know if the Ukrainian was wounded or if the Russians were wounded. But here's what's happening in this video. We see the Ukrainian sitting here, and we can also hear a friend discussing with him at the beginning of the video, and we can see two soldiers walking over the berm of this hill, the small hill. Now, Matthew, who are these people? Take a guess.
I don't know.
They're Russians. These guys that are walking up to this Ukrainian are Russians. And they've stripped themselves of all of their identifying marks. There's no armbands. There's no sign that they're Russians. They're walking straight at the Ukrainians and have not identified themselves as Russians deliberately. The Ukrainian asks, who are they? And the Russians respond, the Russians respond right there. You can hardly hear it. But they say, we're your replacement. They're pretending to be a Ukrainian soldier and telling these Ukrainians, we're your replacement, so that way they can walk right up onto them and shoot them.
Повязки где желтые? Желтые повязки. Что? Кто такие? А зачем? Чья замена? Какая?
We now hear a gunfight ensue. Unfortunately, we cannot tell what happened because the camera started facing the ground. We don't know if the Russians got turned into pulled orc. We don't know what happened to the Ukrainians. But that is a sleazy tactic that the Russians just pulled off right there. That almost degrades trust of Ukrainians whenever a Russian is surrendering, because who knows if they're lying to you or not, because they were lying to these Ukrainians right here, stripped themselves of all identifying marks, all identifying insignia, made sure to make themselves not look like Russians, and then walked up onto these Ukrainians with the pure intent of trying to pull a quick one on them and kill them. That right there ought to be a warning to every single Ukrainian soldier that if you see people walking up to you that are clearly not marked with armbands and look kind of suspicious, the best thing to do is immediately aim your gun at them and be ready to grease them and then ask them who they are. So that way once they try and pull some funny business like trying to shoot you, you can just mow them down where they are. Because this kind of sketchy stuff, it shouldn't happen. I believe it may actually be against the rules of war to try and impersonate enemy forces in an attempt to get the upper hand on them. And so with that, that's the end of that video, and a very sick instance of what the Russians will do at some underhanded violations of the rules of war to try and get one over on the Ukrainians. With that, we're moving to our last bit of Location Unknown news, where we can actually end on a bit of a high note, where we can see that the Ukrainians have found something to do with the burning Russian husks. Of course, y'all know the Russians, as a sign of goodwill, leave a lot of bonfires across the country that are coincidentally shaped like BTRs and other Russian tanks and APCs. The Ukrainians have found out that you can actually put cans within the burning embers of these wrecks and cook stuff. I don't know if it's exactly healthy, but it does work. So here's the video. See, the Ukrainian has a can of food, and he now makes himself a little bit of room in the burning ashes of this vehicle, and then settles it down in there. With that, that is the end of the video, and also a really cool example of Ukrainian ingenuity. Again, also notice, the guy is really smart. He popped the top a little bit. You can see that he took the little key, I guess you could call it, and he lifted it up so that way there'd be a tiny little hole in the top, and that's so that way the pressure doesn't build up inside of the can and then make it explode, so that way you can vent a little bit. But that's still really smart of the guy to be creative enough to do something like this, and it's good to know that the Ukrainians will have hot food forever now, because the Russians are just getting wiped out so quickly and then being overrun that burning vehicles like this are all over the place, and so now they can cook their food wherever they please and whenever they want, because there's just so much of it. But with that, that's the end of the video, and I think Gordon Ramsay will probably start using this kind of cooking method in Hell's Kitchen. Wow, absolutely delicious. And so with that, we're on out of the Location Unknowns, and we're now going to be moving to the Kharkiv area north of the city, where today we saw the Ukrainians were hitting the Russians good here too. We're going to mute that. But we can see the Russians, of course, digging their normal straight line trenches, and it doesn't do them well. Doesn't do them well at all. We now see a little Russian staff car. It looks like a UAZ 469 or a pickup truck. No, it's a UAZ. It's cornering some pretty hard turns. Speeding down the country roads. The drone's just following it. The car probably doesn't even know it's being followed. Drops a bomblet. Ooh, wow, that was actually really good on the drone pilot's part. It exploded right in front of the car. That was a lot closer than I thought it would get. And so that's the end of the video, and an incredible move by the drone pilot to bring the drone in front of the car and then drop the bomblet and try and time it where it would fall in the car. It missed by a little, but I'm sure it caused a little bit of damage to the tires, most likely, although that is something that the Russians could just truck on with and try and repair later. Still, an impeccable job by the drone pilot. With that in mind, we haven't heard anything from the north of Kharkiv City today. It appears that the front line is moving in this area. Unfortunately, we don't have any idea of how much or where specifically, so unfortunately we cannot adjust those front lines. Moving on down towards Chuhuiv, we can see that the Russians are trying to retaliate and at least slow down the Ukrainian offensive, and here we can see that they committed a rocket attack on Chuhuiv. We can see the black smoke billowing up from the middle of the city, but no subsequent fire or explosion. We could also see a second round come slamming down into the city right here. Let's watch that again. I think we can actually see the missile come in right there. Try and get that for y'all again. Oh, it's so freaking quick. Right there. There's the other bomb. It looks like it may be an Uragan rocket, actually. But we don't know how many people, of course, were killed in this attack. And, of course, the Russians are once again attacking residential areas in innocent parts of Ukraine that most likely do not have military personnel in them in large numbers or in this particular area. And they're once again just lashing out at them again, just for the sole purpose of it. That's the end of the video. We're now going to be moving out of the Chuhuiv area and also the Kharkiv region as well, and further south into the northern Donbass. Of course, we covered the Balaklia area earlier in the news, and so if you did miss that, just rewind a little bit and you should be able to find it pretty easy. With that, we're now moving past the cave monastery, Izium, Slavyansk, and we're now moving to the town of Ozerny, where we saw that the Ukrainians are starting to drop some sleeping agents on the Russians in the shape of a bomblet, which is kind of weird. But it looks like the Russians are going to sleep all the same, so it doesn't really matter. Here we can see the Ukrainians sizing up the next target that will be taking some NyQuil. We can now see them drop the NyQuil charge. The NyQuil smacks close to the target, but it looks like neither of them got a big enough dose to go to sleep. We now see the Russians running away, so that way they don't have to take their medicine. We now see some more Russians in another area of the town. And we now see more NyQuil being dispensed, this time far more accurately than last. We can see the NyQuil hit the ground, and it looks like one of them may have gotten the medicine. With that, that's the end of the video, and it's great to see that the 108th Brigade is still using the drones to good effect, and making sure to inflict some casualties on sleep on the Russians. With that, we're now going to be moving past the Lysychansk area, where we've had nothing to report today, in the direction of Verkno-Kamyanka, and we're now going to be moving down to Soledar, where we saw that the Ukrainians have some crabs, and they're spreading them around. This, of course, is an unhealthy thing, but the Ukrainians, in their fervor of spreading it, are deciding to give it to the Russians. We can see some of those crabs right there inside of this bush. And you now see the crabs spreading.
Сегодня ведем розкопки. Валим бліндажі. Готов?
Да.
Постріл!
You can now see them once again spreading the crabs once more.
Готов? Кнопка. Постріл!
And firing once again.
Так, ложи. І я Приціл 272, швидким вогонь прийняв. Зараз 2 швидким.
I love how the Ukrainians almost making an art at this point to write something on every shell. Like, they actually take the time, they're like, wait, let me write something. And they start writing stuff on there.
Постріл!
Also, my god, I never realized it, but even with the Crab's turret being somewhat sizable, the 155mm breach for that gun is so big the crew's like hugging the side of the turret so it doesn't maul them when it recoils.
Постріл!
Jeez, I know that thing would kill you if you were standing in the way of it and that breach came flying back like that. You know there's got to be thousands of pounds of force behind it.
Definitely.
А постріл так як молодость, не вернеш назад.
But that's the end of the video, and it's great to see that the Ukrainians have some crab. Well, actually, it's an unfortunate thing to see the Ukrainians have some crabs, but at least they're giving it to the Russians. So that's at least a plus. But with that, we're going to be moving out of this area, because beyond those 2 bits of news, this area at the front has become largely quiet. It appears that the Ukrainians aren't trying to conduct any massive offensives from this area as of right now, and the Russians are also diverting their attention elsewhere, to say the least. And so with that, we're now... Go ahead.
Enforcer, I just want to point out real quick from that last clip, everybody's saying they weren't wearing hearing protection, and they weren't. They were just sitting in there with that loud shell going off, not wearing anything at all.
Honestly, I think that so many soldiers have gone through the war for so long, they're probably so deaf at this point they don't even need hearing protection. But, you know, I mean... That is true. That's honestly pretty crazy to think that they aren't wearing hearing protection inside of a crab. But with that, we're now going to be moving out of this area and on into our last bit of news for the night, which is the... Let me think real quick, man. Have we gone into our second question segment?
We have not.
All right, and so I was correct. Before we move on to the southern Donetsk area, the southern front in Kherson, we're going to take a quick pause real quick to address the polls and also answer a couple of questions from the live chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so first up, we do have a poll that I think the Enforcer kind of touched on earlier, but just to go over it one more time. Do you like the Attenborough impression? And as some viewers from the UK noted, it is Sir David Attenborough, just to make that distinction. It looks like 45% said somewhat, but occasional use only. 38% said yes, more of it, and 15% said no, I don't like it. So overall, it looks like the audience likes it, but they only want it occasionally.
Well, that's pretty interesting. And also, a I'm pretty much already covered it earlier. I'm trying to look at other stuff on the other screen over here really quick in the live chat. But I do find it pretty good that a lot of people enjoy most of the impressions that I do. But of course, we'll try and use them all with discretion because I don't want to make that a gaffe where it's almost not even news. It's more me just trying to make gaffes. So I do understand that completely, and we will use it with discretion going forward. And so with that, we are on to the next poll.
All right, and up next we have the poll that asked, do you think soldiers are bound by rules of war? It looks like 48% said they are bound by rules of war. That is the most popular option. 35% said there are rules, but only in theory. And 16% said it's a war. There are no rules. Now, for me personally, I would have to fall within the 35% camp that say there are rules, but only in theory. Because, you know, the rules really don't do any good when you're fighting a war because it's about survival. And even though it'd be great if people abided by the rules, they're only in theory, in my opinion. But Enforcer, what are your thoughts?
I would actually have to say, I would have to agree with the 49% and say they are bound by the rules of war. The rules of war were made to make war more civil. And of course, war is already uncivil enough that there has to be some attempt to bring civility to chaos, or at least a little bit of order to it. So that way you don't have soldiers going around raping and slaughtering everyone they run into. Because without the rules of war, that most likely will be what war devolves into. And so I entirely agree that soldiers are bound to the rules of war. And while some parties won't follow it, I do believe that it is, it should be the intention of every nation in the world that their militaries follow the rules of war because they were set in place for the morality of it. Also, another thing is that while war is about survival, things like impersonating enemy forces and then walking up onto them and butchering them because they fell for the ploy, or going around and raping people or looting them, those are the kind of rules of war that the rules were made for. And of course, a couple of others that now extend into how you can kill enemy combatants, like through incendiaries and such things like that, although in some ways it's technical, but we won't go into that right now. I do believe that the rules of war have a purpose and that they should be enforced. That's the reason we made them, and of course a large amount of them came out of the wake of the First World War, when almost everything was on the table, and we saw how terrible things could get if we didn't have rules. And so with that, we are on to the next poll, if we have one, and I hope I addressed that one fairly well.
And that is our last poll for this question segment. So, while in that one, we are moving into our live chat questions. And up first, we have a $25 donation from Praise Adonai, who says, Enforcer and Matt, one way to support Ukraine that is extremely important is to let your national representatives know that you believe in strong military support for Ukraine and why it means to Ukraine. This will make a difference. Yeehaw!
And also, thank you for the support, Praise Adonai. And also, I would agree that calling up your senators and representatives, especially in the United States, or for the British, calling up your members of parliament, or for the Germans, calling up your representatives, because I believe Germany has representatives. They are a federal republic, after all. Calling up any of those, and of course, if from any other country, just fill in the blank. Call up your government representative from your district or region, and make sure to tell them that you support Ukraine and you think support should continue to flow. Those phone calls are more important than a single vote, because while votes get them in office, those phone calls make them assume that the entirety of their constituency wants that thing, considering that they don't get a lot of input from most people. And so they will continue to support Ukraine if you call them. They usually listen to those voices fairly well, especially if you are from their district. If you aren't, they won't even listen to you. And so with that, I hope that does answer that for a second. And thank you so much once again for bringing that up, Praise Adonai, because that is a good way for us to continue to try and support them. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Psyops, who says, the Ukrainian folks are all right by me. They can come to Oklahoma anytime. You can spell Bayraktar without Traktar. Show me some of those beautiful Ukrainian farm boys liberating some tanks.
What?
I'm not sure. He has me worried with that one.
Oh, man. Psyops doing Psyops things. Psyops has been getting kind of wild lately, honestly, but it is pretty interesting. But I do thank you for the support, Psyops. And I do have to say, Ukrainians are pretty cool by and large, and I would welcome them here into the United States to stay and hang out, until the war's over, and then hopefully we can help them to rebuild their country so that way they can return back to the lives they had before the war. Of course, I don't know about the Ukrainian farm boys or anything like that, but I do think that refugees are pretty okay and that they should be welcomed everywhere around the world, considering we are supporting them. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support, Psyops.
And next up, we have another one from Psyops, who puts in another $20 donation and says, Psyops' current evil plans. He says, donut fund to make them so fat they can't physically hit the end stream button. Number 2, abusing enforcers' ADHD for Google Maps by mentioning how Oklahoma is the best state. And number 3, of course, Texas stinks.
Well, I thank you once again for the support, Sahib. So it looks like you actually got 2 out of 3 of the questions in this segment. And could you reread each one, Matthew, so I can address them individually?
He said, first up, donut fund to make them so fat they can't end the stream.
I don't want to get that.
Said,
I don't want to get like that, because we have to end this at some point. But I do thank you for the care you've provided. And so we're on to the next one.
And up next, he said, abusing enforcers' ADHD for Google Maps, mentioning how Oklahoma is the best state.
Unfortunately, since you mentioned it was ADHD, I won't look at it right now, because I do want to make sure to keep on track with the rest of the news. But we will probably look at that later on tonight. And so with that, let's move on to that last bit.
Texas stinks.
And you know I don't make a statement on that. I've never really been to Texas to know. So with that, I thank you for the support once again, Silas, and thank you for always keeping it real with your opinions on Texas. And so with that, we're going to be moving out of this question segment. And if you have sent in a super chat, we will answer every single one of them before the end of the night. And if you send in a live chat, we will also try and answer those as well. And so with that, we're now going to be moving down into the remainder of the news for the night, starting off in southern Donetsk, where there's been absolutely no news to report and the front lines have remained stable. We're now going to be moving down into the southern front, where the front lines have not moved and the situation is stable. Now we're going to move into the Kherson area, where the front lines are moving and the situation is highly volatile. First, we can see that the Ukrainians have been getting some watermelons from the locals as celebration for their return. Also, is it just me, Matthew, or is it hot as hell down here again or not?
It is. I'm not sure why that is, but let me get up in a second and go check the thermostat, because we have to be cool while we're streaming.
Yes, because I'm dying down here right now. I'm sweating over here. So I think...
Now that is not that hot. It's not that hot.
It's that hot in my room. Also, just in case if y'all don't know, I don't have a working air conditioner vent in my room. So I close the door so that way no one else hears me, when I'm doing the stream from my room. And so I have no air circulation whatsoever, and there's only one fan, and it's way behind me, turned on to one of its highest settings, and that's the only way I keep cool in this room. So the air outside of my room has to be somewhat cold for it to actually be somewhat cold in here. Otherwise, I'm just in a hot box. So with
the
that...
enforcer's just excited, folks. He's getting sweaty thinking about all the excitement about the Stugness.
Yeah, maybe. But with that, here's some Ukrainian melons. Take a look at these.
Только освобожденная деревня, люди в панике.
You see the car rolling forward. I mean, you see the locals handing out watermelons like they're party favors. It's like they ganged up to ambush the first Ukrainian they found, and they just started drowning them in watermelons. Number 1, number 2, number 3.
И домой даже не заехал, едет.
Заедет.
Ребята, слава Украине, спасибо
Слава.
вам, пацаны.
Все буде Україна. Все буде Україна.
Все буде Україна, все буде Україна, спасибо.
Щасливо. Щасливо. Дякуємо, дякуємо.
That's a lot of melons. And with that, that's the end of the video, and it's great to see that the Ukrainians are, of course, dishing out the melons during their liberation. With that, we're now going to move on to the next video, somewhere near around Davidiv Brid, where we can see the Russian equivalent of the guy who said, "I'm fighting for my life, man," as Ukrainian artillery hones in on the tank, starts exploding all around it, and the tank tries to make an escape. Here's the video. Also, there's music, so I can't play that. When we see the Russian tank right there, it looks like a T-90A. The artillery's landing around it, and the tankers have decided it's time to leave. The tank is now trying to move away as fast as it can, but it's not looking like it's making a lot of speed. We see the artillery shells still landing wherever it's going. We now see the T-90 over here on the left side of the screen. And we can also see another tank in there. And also, real quick question, Matthew. Did you turn on the air?
I did.
Okay, because it is getting a little bit cooler in here right now. I can feel it. I'm not sweating anymore. Well, you can see the artillery still raining down. And I am now rejoicing for the wondrous invention of air conditioning. Air conditioning is one of the greatest inventions in the world, and it's probably changed how people live the most. But that's something for another time. We're here to watch Russians get obliterated. When you see some black smoke churning up behind that tree, which means that one of the tanks got hit, and it's now been destroyed. And there's a Russian out there somewhere going, "Aw, man." We see the tank continuing to burn behind that tree, and that's the end of the video. And once again, another claim that the Ukrainians can make, and the Russians are running out of their insurance policy. With that, we're now moving towards the front lines in the same area where we can see a Ukrainian fighting through the open fields of Kherson. This apparently was a couple of days ago, according to the date stamped on the video. And so without further ado, I'm going to let y'all see what this Ukrainian soldier was enduring several days ago during a pitched battle in the open field. Well, you can see him ducking down into the wheat, getting up and moving forward, and then once again hitting the ground and ducking. You now see him get up again, start moving forward. Honestly, it kind of looks like he's just peeking his head up above the wheat and kind of crawling through it.
Арта, давай, арта. Арта. Точка Г.
And now I hear the Ukrainian yelling out something to his friend. Whoa, what in the world was that? I don't know what that was. It may have been some kind of an RPG, but we can see it explode in front of the cameraman. Ooh. They're getting some pretty decent fire directed at them in this field. Here, another round to come in. See the smoke plume rising in front of them further down the wheat field. And we can see that they are truly crawling through this field.
Теплик заберу, дай. Теплик заберу, дай. Где теплик? Маленький. Вот это? Не слышите? Не знаю. Да не слышу.
Here, another round fired. That explodes somewhere in the distance.
Уходим. По чуть-чуть. По чуть-чуть уходи. Только.
And with that, that's the end of the video. It's very interesting to see that the Ukrainians were caught in the open in this wheat field, but used the wheat to their advantage, hiding amongst it so the Russians could not see them as well, as some kind of fire was directed at them by a larger cannon or a gun. With that, we're now going to be moving further on down the front, and once again, huge credit to the bravery of these Ukrainian soldiers who continue to push on their offensive, even under the face of withering fire in the wide open. And we're now going to be moving down to a video showing a Ukrainian Mi-24 firing off some unguided rockets at the Russians. A nice little video to see for sure. When you see the camera looking back at the rocket pod as they tilt up and then fire off those rockets. This actually looks more like an Mi-8, to be honest with you. But who's really care? I said that really goofily. Who really cares? I said who's really care?
Who really care?
I said who's really care? But with that, that's the end of the video, and it's great to see that the Ukrainians are once again firing off more unguided rockets at the Russians. Finally, our last bit of footage once again shows another International Legion firefight. This time, the man appears to have a Gucci gun. Here's the video. Unfortunately, I cannot play the audio because it has some pretty goofy music in it. Now see the Ukrainians running in the open. It appears that this guy has an M4. Or an AR-10. It actually looked kind of like a... Nah, it's probably an M4. Or... I can't really tell you for certain ways. We can see that one of them had a scar, though. Now see the Ukrainians advancing once more. Actually, let me call them the Foreign Legion. They may be fighting for Ukraine, but it's the Foreign Legion. Now see them taking a rest for a second. Actually, that's a wounded soldier.
Somebody said a Scar H.
That is correct. It most likely would be a Scar H, the one that this guy's holding, but I didn't want to say that for certain because I know that someone would say something like, "Oh, dude, it's a very, very rare variant of a Colt XM556897 or something like that." So I didn't want to say it for certain, but it did look like a Scar to me. Now see them moving forward once more. A pretty decent montage of the Foreign Legion and what they're doing. Now see them moving through the brush. Now covering their rears, they advance into another house. Now see them firing at something, although we can't see it. Now see them reloading. It looks like everyone in this unit might have a scar. That's pretty expensive. Now see them using a grenade launcher. Now, see, they've taken a Russian prisoner. Actually, a couple. They've taken 3 of them. Nice little total there. All of them are bald. Kind of odd. All of them had the exact same pattern baldness. It looks like the Russians may be cloning men in their biolabs. Of course, that's a joke. And you now see the Ukrainians standing around and marveling at their... Well, actually, the Foreign Legion standing around and marveling at their achievements for the day. Don't want to steal any credit from the Foreign Legion, and they've been doing an incredible job. With that, that's the end of the video, and it's great to see that the Foreign Legion is down there and fighting alongside Ukrainians and defending the country. With that, we're going to be moving on to our final video from the Kherson area, showing the damage that the HIMARS has caused in the Recaptured region. Here's a video showing the absolute desolation that's been caused over the past month or two of HIMARS barrages on this town. Destruction everywhere. Everywhere there was a Russian vehicle, a HIMARS is hit. With that, that is the end of this video, and it is really crazy to think that the Ukrainians have done so much damage to the Russians over such a short amount of time. With that, unfortunately, we cannot speak of exactly what's happening in the Kherson area because we are still trying to respect the operational security of the Ukrainian armed forces in this area, and we will not report on anything that the Ukrainian government has not officially declared, at least in this area. We're also doing the same in the Balaklia area as well, as all of this was reported by the Ukrainian government yesterday. And so with that, we've now reached the end of the news for the night. And so I'm going to hand you all over to President Volodymyr Zelenskyy to wrap up day 199, let me actually change that real quick, of the news. And so without further ado, here's the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on the 9th of September of 2022, one day before day 200.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Маємо хороші новини з Євросоюзу. Схвалено виділення 5 мільярдів євро макрофінансової допомоги нашої держави. Дуже вагомо. По-друге, є рішення Ради ЄС про зупинку угоди про спрощений візовий режим між ЄС і Росією. Це рішення запрацює вже з понеділка і є конкретні рекомендації Єврокомісії щодо візових обмежень для громадян Росії. Це вже захист Європи. Це ускладнить цинічне використання Європи тими, хто не хоче нічого змінювати, не хоче боротись проти війни, а хоче просто споживати і розважатись. Ніби нічого в Європі не відбувається, ніби немає російського терору. Об'єднана Європа – це друга мішень для Росії після нашої держави, нашої незалежності. І це правильно, що Європа захищається. Сьогодні в Києві обговорював цю тему з нашими друзями, президентом Латвії і прем'єр-міністром Польщі, які прибули з візитом. Звичайно, рекомендації на загальноєвропейському рівні дуже вагомі. Проте є юридичний простір, щоб піти далі, щоб зробити більше. Як це зробили держави Балтії і Польщі? Навряд чи державу-терориста можна сприймати джерелом туризму чи якихось там бізнес-візитів. Говорили сьогодні також і про нашу двосторонню співпрацю з країнами ЄС. Зокрема, це стосується спрощення процедур на нашому кордоні. Маємо обов'язково прибрати бар'єри, які ще досі заважають нашим громадянам і компаніям. Народи, які разом захищають європейську свободу, мають бути максимально близькими. Відомо, що на українсько-польському кордоні є певні складнощі, є черги. Обговорив сьогодні це з польським прем'єр-міністром. Маємо згоду щодо того, як вирішити цю проблематику. Глава уряду України зі своїм польським колегою мають узгодити всі технічні деталі. Тож сьогодні обговорили питання спільного митного контролю, розширення пунктів пропуску на кордоні, спрощення поштового обміну між Україною та державами Євросоюзу. Я звернувся до пана прем'єр-міністра Польщі з пропозицією знизити ціну поштових відправлень. Це важливо для наших людей, для усіх, хто зараз потребує особливої підтримки. І ще один важливий аспект. Польща звернулася до нас з проханням допомогти в енергетичній сфері, зокрема експортом електрики. Звичайно, ми це забезпечимо. Польським братам, які допомагають нам з першого дня, ми завжди допоможемо. На нашій алеї сміливості у Києві з'явилися сьогодні ще 2 таблички з іменами пана президента Латвійської Республіки Левіца і голови польського уряду Матеуша Моравецького. Поступово відзначимо усіх лідерів політики, культури, спорту, бізнесу, які у найважчі півроку з 24 лютого по 24 серпня особисто були у Києві, особисто долучились до захисту нашої держави. Сьогодні ж мав честь вручити державні нагороди медійникам, які були відзначені на честь Дня Незалежності цього року. Це і репортери, і оператори, і продюсери, редактори, і ведучі. Вони всі зробили помітний внесок у нашу перемогу в інформаційному протистоянні з Росією, у подоланні російської пропаганди і поширення просто правди про війну, про нашу незалежність. Вшанували хвилиною мовчання медійників, чиї життя були забрані на цій війні. Станом на сьогодні це 38 людей, громадяни не тільки нашої держави, але й іноземці, які приїхали в Україну за правдою і загинули від російської зброї. Наша армія, розвідка, Служба безпеки України продовжують активні дії на кількох оперативних напрямках. Успішно продовжують. Хочу ще раз звернути зараз до деяких блогерів, хто іноді поспішає оголошувати результати тих чи інших активних дій наших воїнів на передовій. Будь ласка, не поспішайте з повідомленнями, не ускладнюйте своїм поспіхом завдання для нашої армії. Не повідомляйте, будь ласка, конкретні деталі оборонної операції раніше, ніж про це говорять офіційні представники нашої держави. На даний час Збройні Сили України взяли під контроль понад 30 населених пунктів в Харківській області. В частині сіл регіону тривають заходи з перевірки, убезпечення території. Поступово беремо під контроль нові населені пункти. Всюди повертаємо український прапор і захист для усіх наших громадян. Прошу українців зі звільненої території, будь ласка, повідомляйте представникам наших сил будь-яку відому вам інформацію про злочини окупантів на українській землі. Підрозділи Національної поліції повертаються у звільнені населені пункти Харківщини. Хочу подякувати сьогодні нашим розвідникам, нашим спецслужбовцям, які вкотре проявили себе дуже результативно у вигнанні ворога. Дякую. Дякую і бійцям 14-ї окремої механізованої бригади імені князя Романа Великого. Командувач на Харківському напрямку особливо відзначив героїчні дії хлопців з цієї бригади. Не забуваємо і про інші напрямки. Жорсткі бої тривають і на Донбасі, і на півдні нашої країни. Дякую морським піхотинцям 503-го батальйону за мужність на Донеччині. Дякую воїнам-розвідникам 131-го окремого розвідувального батальйону, які, ризикуючи життя, висуваються першими, забезпечують виконання поставлених завдань загально військовими підрозділами на Херсонщині. Дякую усім нашим хлопцям і дівчатам, чоловікам і жінкам, які воюють за Україну. Підписав нові укази про нагородження наших воїнів. 293 учасника бойових дій, відзначені державними нагородами. І сьогодні ж у Києві провів зустріч з Халуком Байрактаром, людиною, яку українцям особливо представляти не потрібно. Зрозумілий контекст зустрічі, зрозуміли будуть і результати. Посилюємо нашу державу. Вручив пану Байрактару орден за заслуги першого ступеня. Це дійсно заслужено. Слава усім, хто нам допомагає. Слава Україні!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Zelenskyy, and that also rounds out our news summary for tonight on day 199 of the war. It is the eve before day 200. Another 100 days of war has passed in Ukraine, and unlike the past 100 days and all the days leading up to now, things have truly changed, and we will be seeing in the next 100 days a new Ukraine and a far stronger Ukraine and a far weaker Russia. And so with that, having concluded our news summary for the night, we'll now be moving into the question segments, and also we'll hand it over to Matthew to start off our polls once again. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, folks, and for our final question segment of the night, we have one more poll to go over, and the question was, do you think FN SCAR rifles are a good choice for a Ukrainian battle weapon? It looks like 61% said yes, it is a great choice. 24% said somewhat, it's average, and 14% said no, there are better options. Now, I will say I really like the FN SCAR in all of its different variations. It's a little pricey. I'm not sure what kind of price states get for buying these weapons, but if they do get a good rate, I would say yes, it is a great choice.
I would honestly have to say it's a great choice as well. The SCAR is an incredibly modern weapon and has a lot of, I guess you could say, modern technology, I guess you could say, gun building practices built into it that makes it pretty good. And so with that, I hope that does address the poll, and we are now on into the questions. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And first up from our super chats, we have a $20 donation from Eliza A, who says, "You guys are awesome." And thank you, Eliza, for the kind words.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. Can you reread that one real quick, actually? Because I was reading something in the live chat.
You guys are awesome.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. I was just making sure I didn't miss anything there. And thank you so much for the kind words. It really does help us out a lot that people help us to keep this channel running. And of course, it means a lot to us that your kind words are telling us to keep this thing running. Because we've been here for 200 days now. Because while we're covering day 199, day 200 has already begun in Ukraine. The sun has just shined on that day. And it's honestly impressive to believe that we've made it this far, and we're going to keep going until the end, which may just be months from now. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Sean Tiz, who says, "Sorry, I had to leave the feed to join your Patron. You both do amazing work." And I meant to say Patreon.
Patron. He joined
not the bomb sniffer.
He joined the dog. But I thank you so much for the support, and it's totally fine. I, of course, thank everyone who's joined the Patreon tonight. It helps us out. It helps me out a lot to keep running this channel, and also helps me to start working on videos in the future. Of course, the videos always seem elusive, because right when I want to get around to making them, things start happening in the background, and then I have to go off and start doing them. But of course, if y'all would like to get on the Patreon and help me to run this channel, then of course it'd be great. The Patreon does provide some benefits. I've tried to get benefits in there, but one thing I will say is that none of the benefits are going to be anything like me getting on a phone call with you or anything like that. And here's the reason why. It's not that I do not want to talk to you. It's that I feel like those kinds of benefits start putting up a paywall in between me and y'all, and so I can't just hop into Discord calls whenever I want to and talk to people, because now if I do that, then someone who is paying on Patreon is going to be like, hey, like, you're talking to them, but you know they're not even supporting you on Patreon, and so I'm going to make sure that none of the, I guess you could say, bonuses of supporting me on Patreon or stuff like that. It's mostly going to be like behind the scenes kind of stuff and things like that, because I think that would be neat. I think some of y'all may be interested in that at least. I don't know. But if y'all want to support the Patreon, of course, the link is in the description below under the stream. It's like a massive link. I don't know why. I've seen it be a lot shorter in other places. And also, that's not the link I originally put in, which is kind of interesting. But I hope y'all do enjoy it if you do go over there. And of course, it helps me to keep this channel going. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for being a Patreon member. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for both the support on Patreon and in the Super Chat.
And up next, a big shout out to Phil Tatham for putting in a $20 Super Chat, but without a comment. And Phil, thank you very much for being around for a very long time, and thank you once more for your support. And up next, we have a $20 Super Chat from Justice Ryan, who says, how many Russians are currently surrounded? Keep up the great work, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt.
Well, I thank you so much for the support and the kind words as well. And there are absolutely no Russians surrounded right now because the Ukrainians obliterated Balaklia the other day, at least the Russians inside of it, and then rolled through the city and then rejoined the rest of the offensive. And so as of right now, there are no Russians encircled anywhere, unless if you want to call what's happened in the Kherson area an encirclement. If so, there could be up to 22,000 Russians caught in an encirclement down here, considering that they can't cross the river and they're stuck in that little island-shaped area. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have another Super Chat from The Psyops, who puts in a $20 donation and says, Russia is having a real, and he puts in, looks like a math equation here, something crisis. If you know, you know, ha ha ha. Where are my algebros? Don't spoil it by answering in the chat. Make them look it up.
Well, I thank you for the support, Psyops, but I don't know what an algebro is either. Do you, Matthew?
An algebro? It's a person who likes algebra, but they're a bro, so they're an algebro.
Yo, what's up, my algebros? What's up, my
man. Oh, man.
What's up, my Ukraomis? But with that, I thank you so much for the support, Psyops. And I don't know in particular what that means exactly, but I do thank you for helping this channel keep running. And if people do want to pull up algebros, please do, and let us know what that is too. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again, Psyops, for the support and also keeping the live chat pretty funny. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 Super Chat from none other than DJ Bonebreaker, who says, what those Russians did is called perfidy and is against the laws and customs of war, but violations of said laws and customs of war is pretty much par for the course for the Russian army at this point.
And thank you so much for the support and also clarifying that real quick. Let's actually pull that up. Perfidy. Heard that word before. Perfidy. Deceitfulness, untrustworthiness, and that would be true. That was pretty deceitful what they did, trying to pretend to be Ukrainians. Now, moving on from that, it is par for the course for the Russians. And in the Second World War, it was par for the course for both the Russians and the Germans to try and impersonate the other side's vehicles. At least, at least that's what they say. The Germans had a mock-up of a Panther in the Second World War that looked like an M10 Wolverine from the U.S., but I don't know if they actually used those in combat or not, because I don't think there's any documentation of that. They only found one that was mocked up to look like it. But anyways, moving on from that, I would have to say that that's something that the Russians have been trying to do a decent amount in this war, because we've seen on video before the Russians not having any kind of white armbands on or leg bands or anything like that that would identify them as being Russian. And so with that, I hope that addresses that comment fairly well, and I would have to entirely agree with you. That's almost par for the course for the Russians at this point, but it still doesn't excuse that it is a violation of the rules of war. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $20 Super Chat once more from Sylvester the Cat, who says, Enforcer, I don't think you should do a face reveal. Keep the mystery. It would be like silent movie stars doing talkies or radio stars transitioning to TV. It worked for some, but it did not work for many. Just my 2 cents.
What? What? You can't do this to me. You know how much I sacrificed for this company. I'm just playing with you. But in all seriousness, I do get where you're coming from, but it's most likely going to be a one-time thing. The face reveal isn't going to be something permanent we do on stream, where my face is like in the corner of the screen or something, because while a lot of people do that, I don't like it. because then it almost gets like, it kind of gets this feeling of it like it's a react series more so than the news. And so it would just be a one-time thing, most likely, where I show my face in a one-off video, and Matthew does too, and we probably just address all of the Lee Spring Army in it or something. But on the other hand, it may become a bit of a common thing in my normal videos, not on stream. And here's the reason why. If y'all watch a video from any other YouTuber, and I would pull some up, but of course their material is copyrighted because it's their intellectual property, and I don't want to have to go through the effort of trying to email them and ask them if I can use it on stream just for this few minutes, because it'll probably take them days to respond, or they never respond. But it would cut down a lot on my editing. If y'all have looked at real life lore, he does not show his face, but there's a lot of editing that's involved, especially with a system called GeoLayers 3, which I don't really have a lot of experience with, and so I have to, if I use it, pay someone to make the animations for me, which would cost an exorbitant amount of money having to do that much animations. So it would be a lot cheaper for me to be able to put on my uniform and stand in front of like a backdrop or something and talk to y'all with that going on, because then that saves me a lot of editing afterwards, and it also gives y'all something to look at that keeps the video interesting, and also gets y'all a little bit more personable with me, I suppose. I'm thinking that that would be a pretty cool idea, but once again, I do get where you're coming from, and it does make a decent amount of sense, but like I've said before, I've made a promise now that at 100,000 subscribers, I will reveal my face. And like I've always said, a promise is a promise, and I can't back out of it at this point. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. And knowing that, I hope you spread the word about this channel and tell more people to subscribe, so that way we can get to 100,000 a little bit quicker. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have yet another super chat from PsyOps, who puts in another $20 donation and says, "In the grim dark of the far future, there's only one warg."
What?
Don't know.
PsyOps!
Let me read that one
What
more
is
time.
this?
In the grim dark of the far future, there's only warg. I'm not sure what he means, warg.
I don't know what that means either. How's it spelled?
It's spelled warg. No, I'm just kidding. It's WAAAAARGGG.
Warg. I can't find anything.
There's no results for that.
Warg. Warg. In Norse mythology, a vargr is a wolf, especially the wolf Fenrir and the wolves of Skull and Hati that chase the sun and moon. Based on this, JRR. Wait a minute, what? Wait a minute, what?
Wait, somebody's saying Warhammer 40K.
Oh! I don't play Warhammer 40K. That's probably why I don't know.
And so that we're going to leave it with the Wargwolves of Norway and Norse mythology, and of course move on to the next question. But I do thank you so much for the support, PsyOps, as of course as you help us to continue to cover the documentaries of the horrendous calamities that go on in Ukraine. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and once again, Slava Ukraini.
And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $14 super chat from Junebug. And thank you very much for your support, Junebug. We do appreciate it as always. And she did not leave a comment. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat, we have a $15 donation from Zyper Sniper 1, who says, Ukraine should have a code word, just like the USA had with Flash and Thunder code in World War II.
Can you reread that one real quick?
Zyper said, Ukraine should have a code word, just like USA had with Flash and Thunder code in World War II.
That's a really good idea. And also, just in case if y'all don't know this, of course, this is kind of known as a linguistic thing, but much like the way Germans cannot properly pronounce squirrel in English, the Japanese have an incredibly difficult time, this is a World War II fact, pronouncing the letter R. And of course, that's been joked upon forever. You know, ever since the United States has known the Japanese well enough, that's always been a joke. However, it worked to the United States' advantage in the Second World War, as all of the names, all of the code words that the United States used in the Pacific would have something in them, like lol, like Lollapalooza. That was a code word in the Second World War that the U.S. used a decent bit, because it would almost be impossible for a native Japanese speaker to impersonate that word in English. It would come out as something similar like Lollapalooza, and then they would know that that person is most likely impersonating an American, and then they would get him. So an interesting fact, and it's also very weird to think, like, for example, with the Japanese or the Germans, that you can grow up speaking a language, much like we do in English, and you can try and speak another language, and there will just be things that are unpronounceable because you've learned how to articulate certain kinds of vocal sounds a certain way, and it's almost unlearnable at that point. So I hope that gives another example of those kinds of code words working, but unfortunately, I don't think there would be anything like that. I mean, there may be, of course, there is always the exception, but I don't think there would be a lot of words like that in between Russian and Ukrainian because they are very similar. Most of the time only having a variation of a couple of words or a small pronunciation in each word, or even no differences in pronunciation at all. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question and will address the comment in a way, and also a really good point as well. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $12 super chat from Feklar7, who says, if I meet you in person, will you sign my Enforcer t-shirt so I can wear it to your inauguration in 2040? Slava Ukraine, and keep up the awesome work.
Totally, I would totally do that. If I find you in person, which should be easy after the face reveal, I will sign that shirt, and you can show up with that at the presidential election in 2040. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but that's probably the coolest thing that someone's asked. And also, it's kind of weird to have people asking me for autographs now, because I never thought I'd get to that point ever. But I would do that. That would be pretty cool. And so with that, thank you so much for the support and the cool idea. And I hope to see you sometime around so I can sign that shirt. And also, I hope to see you at my rallies during the 2040 presidential election. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
And up next, we have a $12 super chat from Rust and Rot, who says, the other day, a retired U.S. general was saying that the U.S. should prepare for the collapse of the Russian Federation. Do you think Kadyrov's departure may be associated with this?
Kadyrov? Wait a minute. I know that Kadyrov stepped down. Kadyrov departed? Kadyrov news. Kadyrov news. I'm leaving Russia, Don. I'm very scared, Don. Wait a minute, how many wives does Kadyrov have? He has 2? 12
Looks
kids?
like 2, yeah.
12 kids? What on earth? That's too many kids. Anyways, we're moving up here. Man, I can't find anything there. Dang it. So wait a minute, you're telling me, Matthew, that Kadyrov has actually left Russia?
He says Kadyrov's departure. I think he might mean leaving office, I'm pretty sure.
If Kadyrov's departure from office means anything, I don't know if he's fled the country or not yet. He may be trying to, but I feel like that'll be very difficult for him considering he was such a high-profile person in Russia during this war. I do think that shows that the Russian Federation is starting to have some fractures and cracks in it that Putin's henchmen are starting to see could jeopardize them because he could topple down along with the rest of the House of Cards. And so in that perspective, going off of that one thing, I would say that the Russian Federation is most likely in trouble, and the government in charge right now may be in jeopardy of being overthrown within the next couple of months. And so with that, I hope that addresses the question fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $12 super chat from Nigel Curtis, who says, can the Enforcer do a Kermit the Frog impersonation? Thanks for all you do tirelessly, both every day for Ukraine.
And I thank you so much for the support. I don't know where the Kermit the Frog impersonation request came from. Do you know where that came from, Matthew?
I think some people say when you get excited, you sound like Kermit the Frog.
Huh. Kermit the Frog. Interesting. Let me see if I can do it. 1 second. I'm actually going to pull up Kermit the Frog because I haven't heard Kermit the Frog in ages on my phone.
Oh, no. Is that copyrighted?
It may be. That's why I'm doing it on my phone so that way hardly anyone can hear it. So, Kermit le Frog. So let me listen to him real quick. Let's see here. Nope, that doesn't have his voice in it.
Oh, I heard music.
Yeah,
YouTube's coming down.
Oh, let me see about this one. Well, come on. Hang on, everyone. I'm trying to find Kermit the Frog here. Oh my God, I'm having to go through 5 unskippable ads.
This is about to be an impromptu impersonation. This is going to be good, folks.
Okay, let me listen to this real quick. Okay. All right, I heard a little bit of it. Let me try it. Hi everyone. I'm Kermit the Frog, and welcome to Jackass. So I hope y'all enjoyed that. I hope y'all enjoyed that. I'm sorry about that, everyone, but that was a request, and I don't know. I don't know. If y'all enjoyed that, you enjoyed it. If you didn't, you did it. And so with that,
We are on to the next one now, and thank you so much for the support.
All right, and moving on to the next one, we have a $12 super chat from VPCZX, who says, COVID update, I'm feeling okay. If all of the main 5 stand nations combined force of 536,240 total, how would this be put up against the Russian army?
Can you reread that one again real quick? Because I'm watching everyone go ballistic in the live chat saying that was a perfect Kermit.
And yeah, perfect Kermit. That's pretty good. But anyways, VPCZX said COVID update feeling okay. And also, we're glad you're feeling better.
Hey, that's nice.
Oh, man, unfortunately, you scared the hell out of me. I didn't know what you were saying about that. But anyways, the rest of the question was, if all of the main 5 stand nations combined force of 536,000 total, how would this be put up against the Russian army?
Not well. I would have to... Yeah, that's tough to say, though, because Ukraine did incredibly well, and they have a tiny budget. They have some modern technology, but not a lot of it, especially at the beginning of the war. So they shouldn't have done... I mean, like, if you look at the Ukrainians on paper, just on paper alone, equipment-wise, they shouldn't have done well. But that wasn't considering all of the other factors that no one ever includes in their equations, which I did at the beginning of the war, which is training and other kinds of things like that. The stand countries, however, as far as I know, they all still work off of a conscript system. They all use old Soviet tech. And so in that regard, they would probably be on par with the Russians. However, you do have to remember that troop density is a thing, and they only share so large of an area with the Russians. And considering that all of their forces would be moved most likely to the border of Kazakhstan, they could probably do pretty well against the Russians, especially with Western support. But it'd be very difficult for Western support to get to the stand countries because they're bordered by everything that would not help them. They're bordered by 2 neutral countries, Pakistan and India to the south. They also have Afghanistan in the middle, and obviously it would be pretty much impossible for Western support to make it through Afghanistan or Iran. We can also see that China borders their other side. You know, they're not really a friend. Russia, of course, borders everything else. And so I don't really think there would be a way for Western support to get to them to help them out, so they would just have to go into the war with what they have now. And unfortunately, being honest with you, I don't know a lot about the Stand Series nations and what kind of militaries they really have. So I would have to give you a base assessment that, considering their geographic isolation from any friendly nations that could support them via land or sea, it would most likely be impossible for them to continue on a prolonged war with the pre-war Russia. With post-war Russia after this war in Ukraine, I'm sure they could actually do incredibly well, but pre-war, certainly not. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, at least in a way, and I thank you so much for the support, and also a really good thought-provoking question. Also, one final thing, I'm glad to hear that you are doing better. It seems like a decent amount of our viewers have gotten COVID, at least 2 or 3 of y'all, which is a pretty big deal, and I hope that y'all are all getting through it okay, and I'm glad that you are also starting to round that bend and start to get better. And I hope that you continue on the uptrack, and I hope that we have you back in here, live, spry, and healthy, so that we can continue on covering this war, and you can be here to see the victory, which will be coming around probably in a month's time. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again. Also, thank you so much, Garen Junkie, for subscribing. I just saw you said that, and I just want to say thank you. Hey, another one! How many subscribers do we have?
Looks like 98,000.1.
We have 98,159. And, yep, we have 98,159. Dang, that is crazy, actually. We've gotten almost 170 subscribers on stream. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $21 super chat from Junebug72. And Junebug with the 72 on the end, it's good to see you on the stream and in the live chat. She says, hi, no question, just wanted to adjust amount. Have a good weekend, and Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support, Junebug, and also helping to keep this channel running. Of course, without viewers like you, it is impossible to keep this stream rolling, and so I thank you so much once again for the support and helping us to keep rolling. I don't know if that was like an adjusted value you had in your head beforehand, but if it was, I do thank you so much for keeping with it. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have another $12 super chat from VPCZX, who says, Enforcer, COVID's okay for now. Let's see, it looks like you asked the same question again. I think it just might have been a duplicate. But VPCZX, thank you very much for your continued support. And he throws in another question I just saw in the live chat, which I'll go ahead and read off. He says, Enforcer, if you need any military info on Central Asia, let me know.
And thank you so much for the offer, VPCZX. That's really hard for me to say. But I do thank you so much for the support once again. And I will make sure to hit you up if I want to start making videos on that area. And I think I might try to in the future. Also, I'm just going to let y'all know this in advance. Tomorrow we'll be making a video on the events going on in the United Kingdom right now, the passing of Queen Elizabeth II and the ascension of King Charles III to the throne. It is so weird to call him King Charles because in my entire life he's been Charles the Prince of Wales, and now he's king. It's just seemed like the world's been turned upside down in Britain. But once again, he's done an incredibly good job over his first day of being king. He had a very good address today. If y'all didn't watch it, I highly suggest you do. And I feel like the United Kingdom will be in good hands under King Charles' reign. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have an $11.11 donation from Mike D, who says, what do you think the best way to utilize the captured general would be to send the strongest message to Russia? A bargaining chip, life in prison for war crimes, or something else?
Unfortunately, those would be the only two options. Something else is not an option because they can't execute him, which would only be about the third option I would have. I think that they could indefinitely hold him on trial and use him as a token to exchange for a lot of things. Of course, the exchange would have to be negotiated, so it could be boundless what this man could be, what could be exchanged for. But also, in this instance, no, I can't say that. I would, but then again, morality is morality. You can't just go breaking it willy-nilly. A lot of information could be extracted out of this man in the meantime. I'll just say that. And so with that, I hope that does address the question, and it depends on how the negotiating would go for an exchange, but I feel like the best way they could use this general is to exchange him for either thousands of Ukrainian prisoners or some kind of a deal with what's going on the front lines in the war. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment, and thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And next up, we have a super chat from Nick Poole, who puts in a $10 donation and says, you all do an amazing job of answering my question through live chat, so I would love for my super chat to go to a live chat question, please.
Oh, that's
and
nice
Nick, yeah, that is a good thing that somebody started there. I think it was Psyops or somebody that started that trend. But as always, we are going to go find a live chat question to honor that request, and this one is brought to you by Nick Poole. And this one goes to Herp Derp NV, who says, Enforcer, have you seen the video of the chimp that escaped the Kharkiv Zoo and returning after putting on a coat and riding a bike?
What?
Is that real or is that a joke?
I have never heard of that. If it happened, I've never seen it. If someone could send me a link to that video over Discord, I would love to see it. And so with that, I hope that does address the question. And thank you so much, Nick Poole, for sponsoring a live chat. That was very kind of you. And I love that we've been having this trend with some of our super chats, that people just send them in to support the channel and also sponsor live chats to be answered early. That's a very kind thing that a lot of y'all have been doing recently. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and I can't wait for someone to send me that video in Discord.
And up next, we have a $50 super chat from William Allen, who says, did you view the video of the German invasion of Poland? I recommended you to view to see the white crosses on the armor. Compare that to the video of the Ukrainian version of Blitzkrieg yesterday.
I did see it, and it is very close. However, the German white crosses did appear to be a little bit thicker. They were more like actual crosses, like the Red Cross or the cross on the Swiss flag. White German cross. That is not the one. And let me flip that over here real quick because I just saw one further down that's certainly not good for YouTube. German armor, Balkan Ruse. Nope, that's not it. There we go. Found it. Man, I wish I could just... Alright, let me scroll down for a second. Alright, so... I found them all. In fact, I found a website right here that'll show us every single one of them. So let me throw that back here, and let me make sure that we get all this set up. Okay, so, speaking of that video, William Allen, notice that these crosses, and I'm not saying that you're wrong, it is true, the Ukrainians and the Germans both use crosses, but the German crosses appear to be far wider. As we can see here, they actually give the dimensions of the width and the height of these crosses. And you can see that they're a lot thicker, also visually. They, of course, change in size a little bit by vehicle and variant, but they all retain their thickness fairly well. The Ukrainian ones, honestly, a decent amount of them kind of look like Christian crosses, the crosses that Jesus would have been crucified on, due to how thin they are and also how far up, I guess you could say, the crossbar is on the vertical bar. So with that, I hope that does address the comment, but I do see the similarity there. The similarity is there. It's just that it's not there, I guess, well enough. And also we can see that they changed the Balkan Ruse, or the Balkan Cruise, or whatever it's called, later on. And so with that, thank you once again for the support, William Allen, and I did get to check out that video. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving right along up to our next super chat, we have one from Anthony, who puts in a $10 donation and says, can the Russian fly in supplies or evacuated by helicopter in Kherson? Also, when Ukraine launches a counterattack at Zaporizhia, what will they go for first? Slava Ukraine and Slava LSA.
Thank you so much for support. Unfortunately, I don't want to say what they would go for first. Oh, man. I asked myself this question. When y'all ask these kinds of questions, I don't want to sound like I'm a high and mighty person and sit there and say I can't answer it because I'm going to be right every time. I don't like that. But at the same time, in the back of my head, whenever any of y'all ask that question, I'm like, what if I tell y'all that and it's right? And then I'm selling them out. Because that's something I think about a little bit. And that's what always makes me reluctant to answer these questions quickly. But the Zaporizhia front, I'm going to say this one time, and I'm never saying this again. They're going to go for Melitopol first. That's just how it has to work. And I'm not going to go into why or the reasons why or how they'll do that, but that's the direction they're going to be heading in, like pretty much at light speed, probably. So with that, I hope that addresses that part of the question. And also, moving on to the other parts, can you reread the first one?
He said, can the Russians fly in supplies or evacuated by helicopter in Kherson?
No, they certainly cannot. The Ukrainians have air superiority across the entirety of the country, and their surface-to-air missile defense systems are pretty competent, actually, compared to what we were originally assuming pre-war. And so there's no way that they could fly in a transport aircraft well enough, because the airfields that are on that side of the Kherson River, there is one north of Kherson, the Kherson International Airport, and I actually think that's it. Yeah, there's no other airfield there but that one, and we've already seen this one get struck about a dozen times before the Russians gave up using it. So there's no way for them to do it because, one, they do not have air superiority, and two, the only airfield they could use is within Ukrainian striking distance, and the aircraft that land there would most likely be destroyed once they got to, I guess you could say, what would we like to call it, the gate. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and thank you so much for the support, and also a pretty good question.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from William Arrington. And William does not leave a comment, but thank you very much for your support of the channel and helping to keep us running, as always. And next up, we have a $10 super chat from Santiago Flores, who says, hello, donating 2 live chat questions, and thank you. And there we have another super chat, and this time, is going to be 2 of them, sponsored by Santiago Flores. So let's go up here and find 2. Up first, we have a question from Eric Pace, who says, as best you can tell, who is winning the battle for the skies?
The Ukrainians are winning the battle for the skies right now, mostly through their surface-to-air missile defense batteries, because the Russians, early on in the war, they were conducting a massive amount of sorties, and because of that, and the competence of the Ukrainian air defense, and it was not knocked out in the first day of the war, at least the more modern equipment, they were able to shoot down Russian aircraft with a pretty decent percentage of reliability. It was almost a constant rate for within the first few months of the war, and were able to shoot down hundreds of planes and hundreds of helicopters. And so the Russians started pulling back their air force a large amount, because around 20% of it had already been destroyed. At least the combat side of their aircraft, 20% of them had been destroyed. And so, going off of that, the Russians are very reluctant to use their air force because of Ukraine's surface-to-air missile defense system, and for that reason, the Ukrainians largely control the skies right now. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support, and a pretty good question. A lot of people are asking some great questions tonight, and with that, we're going to move on to the second live chat question.
And for the second live chat question, donated and sponsored by Santiago Flores, it goes to Astronomical Productions, who says, do you think when Ukraine wins this war, it will be looked at by their future generations the same way Americans view the Revolutionary War, as their defining moment?
I think this war will be looked at in Ukraine's psyche, kind of how the... This is going to sound weird because we're about to use Russia for a comparison. I think the Ukrainians are going to look at this war much like the Russians look at the Second World War. The Second World War in the Russians' minds is a time where they proved their mettle against all odds and defeated the Germans, which almost defeated them in the onset of Operation Barbarossa in 1941. I think that's what this war will be looked at, because in a lot of perspectives, it got that close. For example, in the Second World War, the Germans sieged St. Petersburg, and they also were at the gates of Moscow, literally in the suburbs, fighting there. And in Ukraine, the Russians almost besieged the city of Kharkiv, which would be Ukraine's equivalent of St. Petersburg, or at the time Leningrad, and they were literally fighting at the gates of Kiev. So in those instances, it's very similar to the Germans trying to invade the Soviet Union in World War II and failing. And so in that regard, I think it will be viewed very similar to that, because this is the fate of their nation in the balance. This isn't really like the Revolutionary War, because the Revolutionary War was the colonies, the 13 colonies, revolting from the British and trying to make their independence, and the Ukrainians already had their independence going into this war and are now trying to defend it. So with that, I would more so view it as the Soviet Union in the Second World War in only one regard. Not in every regard, of course, because there's a whole bunch of other stuff that the Soviet Union did that was atrocious, that the Ukrainians have not done at all, but at least in the regards of how the war is going in the mindset of Ukrainians, I think it'll be viewed like that afterwards. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and thank you so much once again, Santiago Flores, for sponsoring those two live chats. They were both incredibly good, and they were answered thanks to your support and also your request. And so with that, we are going to move on to the next one, and thank you so much once again, Santiago, for your kindness.
And up next, Santiago Flores sponsors his own question with a $10 donation once more, and says, good evening. Do you think at this time that Belarus or Transnistria that have Russia troops will try to attack Ukraine to slow down their offensive? Donuts and pizza. Please, guys.
And thank you so much for the donuts and pizza, Santiago. You've been incredibly generous to us tonight, not only to the live chat questioners, but also us as well. Now, to talk about Transnistria, nothing will happen there. I'm completely certain that there's no way that the Russians could support anything happening from Transnistria. However, Belarus is another story. Belarus does have a direct land connection to Russia, and so the Russians could railroad in supplies, troops, and you know, of course, equipment to start something in the Belarusian area. However, we know that the Belarusian military is not committed to this war at all, and that's why the Belarusians are never entering it. We've seen that be hinted at by Lukashenko multiple times, but it appears that they cannot muster the willpower within Belarus to make that a reality. So the only thing we would probably see again from the northern area of Ukraine is a Russian offensive launched from Belarus. But we already know that the Russians are in a bad strait down in the southeast, and they're already pulling all of their resources they have in this entire war to try and defend the areas down here. And so pulling off more soldiers from this area and diverting them to the north to start a feint counterattack, well, a feint offensive, most likely would do them even more harm in the southeast and not really gain them much in return. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, Santiago, at least in my opinion. So take it with a grain of salt. I might be wrong, but that's what I'm looking at it as right now. And thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a super chat from, let's see, Zyper Sniper 1, who puts in a $10 super chat. And he also sponsors a question and says, pick a question from the chat. This one is on me. And Slava Ukraine. And Zyper Sniper, thank you very much for the support. And as I always say, this question is sponsored by Zyper Sniper 1. And let's go grab that question from the live chat. And up next, we have one from Alex Ponce, who says, Enforcer, do you think Ukraine should have waited for the Lend-Lease to activate before doing their Kherson offensive?
That's a great question, and I think the Lend-Lease is already effective, and that's why they may have begun the counteroffensive, or they had enough supplies stockpiled before the Lend-Lease that they were already confident enough with starting it early, before the Russians would expect it, and then letting the Lend-Lease supplies come into the country when they needed them and when they started running out of their initial onset of supplies. So I think that's most likely how the Ukrainians are working out right now, and it's done them incredibly well, even without the Lend-Lease, as far as we know, going into full swing. They are knocking the Russians around, even without those additional weapons. And so I think it was a pretty good call on the Ukrainians' part, and of course, we'll just have to see in the coming weeks if that was true or not. So with that, I hope that does answer the question, and thank you so much, Zyper Sniper, for sponsoring that live chat. Y'all been incredibly kind with sponsoring live chats these days, and I bet a lot of live chatters love that y'all are getting their questions answered incredibly soon. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you to everyone who sponsored a live chat tonight.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat once more from DJ Bonebreaker, who says, those code words that use a sound unpronounceable by the enemy are called shibboleth.
Well, I don't even think that's pronounceable to me, and I speak the language. But I do thank you for the support, and also thank you for sharing that little tidbit of info with us, because I did not know that they were called as Shibboleth. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Richie MC, who says, Kazakhstan news, Pope Francis' upcoming visit to Kazakhstan on 13-15 September will be the Holy Father's latest gesture to promote peace in the world. Putin would not dare threaten the Pope visit, would he?
I don't think Putin would threaten the Pope's visit. It's a terrible idea to start threatening the leader of a large religious group. That would be like threatening the Patriarch of the Eastern Orthodox Church, or I'm trying to think of the equivalent in the Muslim world. Who in the world would that be? The Ayatollah?
I guess so.
That would be like threatening the Ayatollah. You're going to start making an enemy of all of the Catholics in the world, and there's a large amount of Catholics. I believe there's around 1.1 to 1.2 billion of them, and that could start changing a whole bunch of opinions about the Russians in other parts of the world. For example, everything in Central and South America is largely Catholic. It's most of those countries have an overwhelming Catholic population, and you could turn this entire continent against Russia on probably the flip of a switch if they threaten someone like Pope Francis. So that I think that he'll most likely get there safely and just conduct his visit there. And I think that it's a pretty good cause, trying to promote world peace. It's a pretty good one. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question. And thank you so much once again for the support, and a really interesting one. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Joe Little, who says, how really bad are Ukrainian winters?
Ukrainian winters are somewhat tough. The ground does freeze over in that area, and it's pretty cold, as you know. The Germans had a pretty tough time, along with the Soviets, dealing with the Russian winters. Because you can kind of say that Ukraine is somewhat in a similar climate as the rest of Russia. The winters can be very fierce. Even the British and the French had a problem with the Ukrainian winters during the Crimean War. And so, suffice it to say, without getting into exact details about the climate, it would be pretty rough for both sides involved. And so whenever anyone asks, just for those of y'all to know in the future going forward, if y'all ask me who's going to do better in the winter, just know that when I say that someone's going to be doing better in the winter, I'm not saying that they're going to perform even better in the winter than they did in the summer. I'm comparing who's going to be suffering the least, because all militaries suffer in the winter. It's incredibly cold. It's almost impossible to start vehicles if it gets too cold. The soldiers start freezing. They have to have some kind of a heat source to keep them warm. They can't just wear coats forever. People are miserable. It's a terrible time to fight a war. Usually back in older times in history, both sides would have just set up winter camps and waited out winter, but nowadays, due to modern war, that doesn't really happen much anymore. But I think that the Ukrainians would still fare better than the Russians in the winter. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment, and we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, big shout out to Nola Guide for putting in a $5 super chat, but without a comment, and thank you very much for your support. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Squamous Amos, who says, I've been COVID stricken the last couple of days. I've been watching and liking, but not really able to interact. Y'all are a comfort during the gloom. And Squamous, it is very sad to hear that you also have COVID, and we're glad that you're getting better, and we're glad you find some comfort by watching the streams.
Oh man, I hate to hear that you gotten COVID too, Squamous Amos. It's like everyone's getting COVID. And I hope we don't get COVID because, you know, of course I made a promise to y'all. I'll just power through the COVID. I'll be on here going, what's up everyone? Welcome to the war news. But with that in mind, I hate to hear that you've gotten COVID too. I hope you get through it okay like everyone else seems to be right now. And of course, thank you so much for the support. And also, I'm glad that we are helping you get through COVID. It seems like we're helping a decent amount of people keep their minds off COVID and just enjoying some news or maybe a couple of jokes, and I'm glad that we're able to help you out as well. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Squamous Amos, and hang in there. The whole East Spring Army is behind you like everyone else. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again. And I can see that every time I do a voice impersonation, there's a lot of people who like it, but then there's a small group of people who just hate it. Like, I just saw Matthew have to get rid of one guy who was like, stop the stupid voices! And, no. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from CJ, who says, Ukrainians to orcs. You know come to Eastern Front come to you.
And that's true. The Ukrainians are really bringing it to the Russians. And also, thank you for the support. That's like a play on that old, in Russia, well, you know, in rest of the world, it's like this. In Russia, that thing in the rest of the world does you joke. And I like that. That's a pretty good call back to a good time in jokes, when jokes made sense. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and a pretty good joke. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, a big shout out to Mai Zhu Yang, who puts in a $5 donation and says, question, if the fans send a super chat without any comments or questions, would you guys consider getting a question from the live chat for them?
That's an interesting idea. I would do that, but at the same time, then I have to skirt over their support. Like, let's say they send in like $50 and it has no comment attached to it. We go, okay, there's like $50 from Magic Sky Girl, and we're going to answer a question from live chat. And we don't even really credit them with helping our channel to survive much, because we can't ever go like, oh, hey, thank you so much. So it's an idea, but unless if someone explicitly asks for it for now, unless if they explicitly ask us to do that, we probably won't. Because I want to make sure that if they did send in support, instead of just, you know, instead of just blowing over their support, I always want to make sure that we thank everyone we can for their support and helping this channel to keep going. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Brad C., who says, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, that captured Russian officer we were trying to figure out his rank is actually Colonel General Andrei Sijovoy, commander of the entire Eastern Front. Comments and thoughts. And Brad, we actually did find that out yesterday, and my thoughts are Slava Ukraine.
And my thoughts are, that's wonderful, and I hope that the Ukrainians milk that the best they can. And also, just like Matthew said, Slava Ukraini. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Vance Hicks, who says, if the Russian lines collapse, do you think Ukraine should push into Russian territory? They can't take Russia, but could affect regime change, maybe.
They might be able to, but at the same time, that could backfire, and a lot of Russians could solidify around the government, thinking that their alliance will be in jeopardy, and then the government could have a excuse to declare full mobilization and start sending the entire military towards Ukraine. And while the Ukrainians have dealt with a 250,000 soldiers being pitted against them, I don't know if they could fare well against the entire weight of the Russian military. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, but I do see where you're going, and it is a direction that it could go in, but there's always a flip side. And the flip side is what I'm scared of with that, because if it went in the flip side direction, it could go terribly. And so with that, I hope that answered the question fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support.
And moving right along, up next we have a $5 super chat from Galaxyfur 4014, who says Ukraine is very large. It's bigger than any EU country and just 15% smaller than Texas. And Texas is 2.8 times larger than the UK. Ukraine is 2.5 times larger.
And I thank you for the support. Wait a minute, can you... Hang on, I didn't catch the name there real quick. That was PsyOps, wasn't it?
That was Galaxyfur 4014.
What? I heard Texas, and I was like PsyOps. I was like, it's got to be PsyOps. But Galaxyfur 4414?
4014.
4014. That is interesting to note that Ukraine is still smaller than Texas. For some reason, I thought that Ukraine would be a little bit larger, but then again, we got to remember that this map is a Mercator projection, and so things get larger the further south or north you go. I've heard a lot of reasons for why that is, but the truth is, it's a flat map, and there's no way to make something on a sphere look accurate on a flat map. Moving on from that, however, that is pretty crazy to think that Ukraine is about 2 times the size of the United Kingdom. I've been to the United Kingdom, and while you would think, as an American, that it's a small country, once you get there, it's deceptively large. It takes a long time to get anywhere. Like, we drove all the way from London to York, and that took us ages. It literally took us all day to get there. And in the United States, covering the same distance, that would have been like a walk in the park. That would have been like from Birmingham to like Louisville, and that would have felt like distance covered. But in Britain, doing the same thing from London to York, it felt like forever. And so I can just imagine how big Ukraine actually feels once you get there. But with that, I thank you so much for giving us a little bit of information about the scale of Ukraine, and it is the second largest in Europe, second only to Russia, and that only includes the parts of Russia that are west of the Ural mountain range, which is right here where my mouse cursor is. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment. Thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one. And before we move on to the next one, how many do we have left, Matthew?
So let's see here. It looks like we have about 12 left.
All right, and so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Martin Bridge, who says, thank you for the updates. I missed last weekend, so good to see some amazing progress in Recaptured by Ukraine. And of course, Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support. I hate to hear that you did miss last weekend, but hey, that's okay. That's what the videos are for. And of course, I thank you so much for enjoying this channel so much and helping us to keep it running, and also those kind words as well. Now, I've kind of gotten into a broken record talking about kind words, but they do mean a lot to us, and I'm glad to know that a lot of people tell us to keep this thing going, because each time we hear that, I get encouraged to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope we were able to address that comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a super chat from Justin Albers, who says, I tried to donate more to LSA. I finally have money to donate, and YouTube minimalizes $RLTW SMD RUA GFY Pootler LOL 3-75 is best bat RSMFD.
And I thank you for the support. Unfortunately, I don't know what the last part means, but I highly suggest, I do thank you for the support, but if you are a little strapped for cash, make sure to take care of yourself before you care for me. I will be fine. And of course, I love that you watch these streams, but always, I highly suggest everyone, make sure to take care of yourselves first. I don't ever want to feel, because whenever people say that, I always feel like I may be putting you in a bit of a bind. And if you think that you may be putting yourself in that situation, please make sure to take care of yourself before you help me out, because I would feel very bad to know that that you were having to tough it out because of me. But I do thank you so much for the kindness you've shown. It's incredibly nice of people to support this channel, and thank you so much once again. I don't know what the last part means, but I will say this. Slava Ukraini. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Billy, Joe, Carl, Bob, Danny, and Frank, who say, okay, third time is the charm. Option 3 for the poll, cancer hamster. Let's do this, Matthew, but tomorrow during the news segment so that all can vote.
And Matthew, if you could make sure to compile that poll, if you think it's safe to do, because I haven't ever seen the whole thing in its entirety, so I don't know if it's safe or not. If you could compile that poll and have that one ready for tomorrow, I'm sure that that the family would appreciate it. And so with that, I hope that addresses the super chat fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Riley Beatty, who says, can you look at St. Petersburg's recommendation to the Duma in regards to Putin?
And can you reread that one real quick?
Yes, can you look at St. Petersburg recommendation to the Duma in regards to Putin?
St. Petersburg recommendation to the Duma in regards to Putin. I don't know what that means. I'll try and pull it up though. St. Petersburg recommendation. St. Petersburg election recommendations. Voter guide. This is St. Petersburg, United States. Odd. It looks like I cannot find St. Petersburg, Russia here when I pull it up. So unfortunately, I can't really answer that question because I don't know about it. I'm going to have to declare ignorance on it because I didn't know anything about it going into that question. And unfortunately, I couldn't pull anything up on it. But with that, I hope that does answer the comment somewhat well. And I'm sorry we couldn't really find anything about it that was definitive. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, real quick to go over the poll that I put up a while ago. Do you think Putin would threaten the Pope? Pretty evenly split. 51% said yeah, he might, and 49% said no, likely not. So that's crazy how split y'all are on that. But Enforcer, any thoughts real quick?
I still lean towards he probably wouldn't, because that would not be a smart move. Because that would be, I mean, like, the Pope's a neutral figure. I mean, like, you can't really hate the guy. He doesn't do anything that's incredibly divisive rather than being the Pope. So with that, I feel like he wouldn't, but then again, Putin's a pretty nutty guy, so I don't know. But with that, I hope that does address the poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Nicholas Senskuzzi, who says, do you know of any orgs that I can work for to rebuild Ukraine post-war? I'm in a ship fitter / iron worker here in the States. And I'll say real quick, Nicholas, when I was reading that the first time, I thought you said, I'm a shoplifter. I was like, a shoplifter? I'm like, okay. But anyways, I'll turn it over to the Enforcer at this point.
I don't know of any organizations that you could join for that reason. I know they're out there. I just don't know them by name. Because we don't run fundraisers for them. We run fundraisers for ones that are over there now. Because, you know, we want to focus on the here and now and then the rebuilding later. But with that, unfortunately, I don't know of any off the top of my head. But I do thank you for the support. I hate I couldn't answer the question, but maybe some people in the live chat may be able to help out with that. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, Nick Poole puts in another $5 super chat and says, this is to make it 10. And just to clarify, I said Nick's donation earlier was $10, and he actually only put in 5, so I doubled it for him automatically. So he put in another 5 to make it actually 10. So Nick, you are an absolute legend for that, and thank you very much for the support once more. And moving right along, we have a $5 super chat from Yuri Bench, who says, is Putin just a big liar, or is he also full of delusions? He's both.
I would have to say, yeah, I would have to actually say he's both. He's also he's a big liar, and he's also full of delusions, and the lies feed the delusions. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question in kind of a short way, but still a fairly good one. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support, and also a pretty good all of the above question. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from MJ, who says, a serious question. Do you think Putin realizes he is in deep doo-doo?
I think Putin realizes that. I think that Putin realizes that through all of that Russian for war and all of that Putin he's been doing, that he is in a lot of poo-poo. But he doesn't.
There's really no time left for Stalin either.
Yeah, there's no time left for Stalin, and it's all over the Lenins. And so with that, I don't think that I don't think he wants anyone to know that, but I'm pretty certain he knows that he's in a pretty bad bind right now. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well with a lot of puns. So if you are allergic to puns, you might want to pull out an EpiPen or something, because I'm probably sending you all into anaphylactic shock. And with that, we are on to the next one, and I hope we answered that fairly well.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Ground Guy Life, who says, are we expected to see North Korean volunteers in Ukraine, and what's China's support like on equipment for Russia's reserve force?
I haven't heard of any Chinese support for Russia, and also I have heard some people saying that the North Koreans are sending volunteers, but I could not find any official news for that today. The only thing I can find about the North Koreans today is that they have now made it law that they can launch preemptive nuclear strikes, which is the first of its kind in the world, and kind of a little alarming, but beyond that, I haven't heard them say that they're sending volunteers anywhere. And so with that, I hope that does kind of answer the question in a way, and I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have another $5 super chat from Billy, Joe, Carl, Bob, Danny, and Frank. The whole family is once again putting in another super chat, and they say, also, now that Russia's on the run, Putin might be napping next at the Red Square. But how? Poll in R2 for tomorrow. He says some word here I can't pronounce, and he also says another word that I can't pronounce.
Well, I thank you for the support to the whole family, and also I hope to see him not at the Red Square. I hope to see him somewhere, maybe taking a nap in the gutter. But with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we are on to the next one. And I once again want to thank the whole family for y'all's support.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from MJ once again, who says, if Putin has to choose between defeat and full mobilization, I say he mobilizes. What are your thoughts?
I say he would just have to accept defeat. If he does full mobilization, he's already lost, because the Russian public will go into revolt. So with that, I hope that does address the comment in a way, in a shorter way, but, you know, without going through all the massive details, I feel like he will lose in either direction. It's just that doing full mobilization will then make him look like an idiot, and then he'll have to step down and run away anyways, or, you know, get slaughtered. And so with that, I hope that answers the question. We are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $4 super chat from Mick Dundee, who says, what happened to the Belarusian guy fighting for Ukraine, Mr. Mustache?
Mr. Mustache is still around. It's just that we don't get a lot of videos from him anymore, or at least videos we show on the stream. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question somewhat well. He's still alive, I can tell you that, but I don't know exactly what he's doing right now. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and moving right along to our next one, we have a $5 super chat from Riley Beatty, who says, the Washington Post has an article about officials asking for treason charges.
Interesting. That would be pretty interesting. See, I'm sure that's just a little thing that's happening in Russia right now, and then Russia will, Putin will probably have them all arrested. But then again, never really know. That can actually go in a good direction. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment, and thank you so much for letting us know. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $4 super chat, once again from Mick Dundee, who says he's already been sanctioned for realistic comments. He's a former general.
And who was he talking about once again?
I think he might be talking about Mr. Mustache, maybe.
If you're talking about Mr. Mustache, I did not know that about Mustache Man. And if you're talking about the general that was captured earlier today, that would also be interesting to know as well on him. So with that, I thank you for the support and also providing us with that information. I just kind of hope that we're getting it right with who we're talking about. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $3 super chat from Tyler Waycott, who does not leave a comment, but thank you very much for your support. And up next, we have a $3 super chat from Smill437, who says, cry, 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 Western trained UAF. I guess they aren't promoting the superiority of Russian training and doctrine. They know what it is, deep down.
And I do agree with that 100%. Russian doctrine and training is pretty garbage. in any kind of Western doctrine, even if it's poorly implemented, is far better off than the Russian conscript doctrine that is literal dog water. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $3 super chat from Island Times, who says, swap the general for Nord Stream gas and infinite free supply at Enforcer Matt.
That's a pretty good idea. I actually think that's a pretty interesting one, and I think that the Ukrainians should look into that. Maybe they'll buy them a lot of favor with the European Union. And so with that, I hope that does address that comment. And that was a really smart idea right there. Very creative. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And next up, big shout out to Sabren Dabour for putting in a $5 donation. Thank you very much for your generosity and supporting the streams and watching and supporting. And I just totally lost my train of thought there. But I said repeated the same thing over twice. But seriously though, thank you for the support. And up next, we have a $2 super chat from TR, who says, here's 2 for you. The rest is for fundraiser.
And thank you for the support. And how much did he send in total?
$2.
And so 2 for you, and the rest is for a fundraiser?
Yes.
Well, I thank you for the support, and I guess there isn't going to be any going to the fundraiser. But thank you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $3 super chat from Patrick Begood, who says, you guys caring so much is why we are with you. Love from Montreal to you too. Cheers.
And thank you so much for the support, Patrick. Be good. And I thank you so much for the kind words as well. We try and care as much as we can, and I'm glad that a lot of people do enjoy the level of care we put into this. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
Yes, indeed, and thank you very much for that. And up next, we have a $15 super chat from Martin Nielsen, who says, in a world full of lies, we are blessed with 2 brothers who seek truth through documentation. Thank you all so much. All the best from Copenhagen in Denmark.
And I thank you so much for the support, Martin. And real quick, everyone, I'm actually going to have to step off of my higher pitched voice because it strains me a lot to do. And it's kind of starting to hurt my vocal cords at this point tonight. So I'm going to have to step down and go a little bit more demure for the rest of the night. So sorry about that in advance. My energy's still here. It's just that the voice can't carry it anymore. Anyways, I do thank you so much for the support and enjoying that I verify things through video. I've seen a lot of people kind of get pissed off about that and complain that, oh, you know, he's not just taking the trust me bros seriously. He's just he thinks that everything in this war happens on video. And it's so annoying to listen to these people because they just take trust me bros and they run with it. And having grown up on the internet, I know that almost every trust me bro on the internet is wrong. And so I make sure that we have some kind of video evidence to back up almost everything that we say. So I thank you so much for enjoying that as well. I think that's one of the shining qualities of this channel and its reporting. And that's something that I hope to uphold through all of my other projects in the future on this channel if we move on beyond this war once it's over. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and I thank you for the kind words as well, as they do mean a lot to both Matthew and me. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from VMan29397, who says, video of the Oblivious tank needs the derp song.
Well, I thank you for the support, and there was a derp song on it. It was that circus song. It was like the Benny Hill song. But unfortunately, I couldn't play it because of copyright infringement. And so with that, thank you so much for the support. And also, pretty good idea right there. I like that one. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from CA Lags, who says the Ukraine national anthem lyrics really fit the war.
And yes, they really do. I think the Ukrainian anthem's lyrics are really good. And also, I think that the musical composition of it is great as well. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, CA Lags. And I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Richie MC, who says, Operator Starsky, update this Sunday.
Oh yes, that is true. He will be coming on this Sunday. Well, I can't guarantee that because things can happen and he might not be able to show up. But that is the plan right now, to have Operator Starsky on again this Sunday, helping us to support a fundraiser. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and he will be here. Also, another thing, Matthew, I'm seeing a lot of people actually enjoying me talking in my normal voice, and so if you could you run a poll to see if people do enjoy this voice more so than the hyped up one or not? Because I would actually be interested to see in what people think about that.
Okay, let me put this one up real quick. Let's see, yes or no. There we go. All right, and also, folks, I did see the bot, and I used a little bit of bot be gone, and also, cheers for the bot getting kicked out. Yeehaw! And moving on to our next super chat, we have a $2 donation from C.A. Lags, who says Putin versus Pope equals not smart equals Putin versus Ukraine.
Can you reread that one again so I can get the equation down?
Yeah, I was never good at math, so this is a little tricky, but he says Putin versus Pope equals not smart equals Putin versus Ukraine.
Unfortunately, for some reason,
I think you have to divide and then multiply to get the answer.
Unfortunately, I'm not good at math, and my brain isn't really following the math right now, but I do thank you for the support, and we're on to the next one.
And for our final super chat of the night, and also real quick, who is Nick Offerman? Does anybody know?
Nick Offerman. He's been in here before.
Oh my god, I just pulled him up. Is that the guy from The Office?
Hang on, let me pull him up real quick.
He looks familiar from somewhere. I see a picture of him right here.
Isn't that the guy who played Ron Swanson?
I think it is. Somebody said, is he your co-host? I'm not sure if he's talking about you, Enforcer, or me. I see everybody saying who he is now. I don't know who he's talking about. I've never heard him speak. I've seen him in pictures and memes and stuff, but I don't actually know how he sounds. So maybe people can let me know who they're referring to. But anyways, for our final super chat of the night, we have a $1 donation from Michael Cabrera, and he does not leave a comment. So thank you very much for the support, and we are moving on to our live chat questions. And Enforcer, would you like to go ahead and put a cutoff on the super chat so we have time to get to many live chat questions?
Yes, I would. Tonight we're going to be putting another cutoff on the super chats once again. Beyond this point, we won't be able to address any super chats. But if you would like to support us and help us to keep doing what we're doing, please make sure to go hop over on the Patreon, because that helps me to keep this channel running and helps me to focus on videos in the future. And so the link is in the description below. You just go click on it, and there are several different little monthly subscription plans that are down there with little perks here and there. I'm still trying to figure out if there will be perks added in the future for certain groups and how much I can feasibly do with the Patreon. But of course, if you would like to support me, there is the option there. Also, if you would like to send it in as a super chat on stream, there is always tomorrow beyond this point. But beyond now, we won't be able to take any more super chats. But I do thank everyone so much for the support. And with that, we're going to be moving on into answering live chats for the rest of the night. And we're most likely going to answer them for the next 10 to 15 minutes. Not entirely long, because tonight I'm actually feeling a little bit fatigued. And I want to try and get some sleep because I haven't been getting much lately. And so with that, we are on to the first one.
And up first from the live chat, we have WFTU and also Mark Hodges, who figured out the Morse code. Message number 1, the Kupiansky district, Kharkiv Oblast, and number 2, Ukraine is just going to keep steamrolling the Russians until they look like blini.
Also, ding, 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 you are correct. You did get those correct. And also, if y'all don't know, blini is a Slavic form of pancake. So with that, I hope that does address the Morse code incredibly well, fairly well. And thank you to everyone who continues to decipher the Morse code messages day in and day out. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for deciphering that Morse.
And up next, we have a question from What Else Happened, who says, please announce any updates on the nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia. What should we expect if there is an accident? Oh boy.
Unfortunately, I cannot give any updates as to what's going on there right now. The IAEA inspectors say that it was a pretty precarious situation from what I was able to tell. However, we do not know the current situation as of this moment because there hasn't been any news about it for the past 2 days. However, if the nuclear power plant does explode, a massive swath of radiation, regardless of where it goes, will eventually end up landing in Ukrainian-controlled areas of the country, causing massive amounts of ecological damage and most likely damage to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people and their health. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, real quick, it looks like 86% like the Enforcer's normal voice better, and 14% don't. So overwhelming support for normal.
Interesting. That'll actually be great as relief on my voice. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a live chat question from JF, who says, do the Russian armed forces teach their troops to swim well? And they don't teach them to do much well, but they are swimming in failure quite well, so I'd say yeah.
I have to agree with Matthew on that one. That was actually a really well-placed joke. So with that, I hope that answers your question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Timeout, who says, Enforcer, what do you think about Russia Air Force in this area?
Russian Air Force in this area. Which area?
I'm not sure what he meant by this area.
Unfortunately, I can't answer that question because I don't know where that area is in particular, but if you can clarify that, we will try and circle back around to it. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a live chat question from Happy Dragon, who says, would you please explain the Lend-Lease deal and when it starts?
The Lend-Lease deal is the United States providing military aid to the Ukrainians on a lease. So at some point, the Ukrainians will either have to return the equipment or they'll have to pay the Americans for it. The Lend-Lease is supposed to go into effect in mid-October and will be providing a massive amount of arms, supplies, and ammunition that will be able to keep the Ukrainian war machine rolling and, of course, rolling over the Russians. So with that, I hope that explains the Lend-Lease in somewhat of a shorter term. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Sittin' and Thinkin', who says, as Putin's world crumbles, what country would he flee to for refuge?
That's an incredible question, and I have absolutely no idea where they would go. Oh, well, where Putin would go. He can't go to China because they probably wouldn't take him because that would lead to a lot of diplomatic repercussions for them. He can't go to India or Pakistan because they probably wouldn't have him. He can't go to the stand countries because Russia could just go in there and probably take him back out because the stand countries would most likely give him up to the Russians. He can't go to the West because the West obviously will not have him. And so I can't really tell you where he could go. He could maybe go to South America, although a lot of countries down there probably wouldn't want him. There's really nowhere for him to go. That's a huge thing to me, is that he could try and flee, but where will he go? He really doesn't have a country that will take him. Some people are saying Iran, and some people are saying North Korea, and those are somewhat viable options, but I feel like if out of both of those, Putin would most likely pick Iran over North Korea, because who in the world would go to North Korea? But with that, we are on to the next one. I hope that answers the question somewhat well.
And up next, we have a question from Black Thunder, who says, Enforcer, how many troops do you think Ukraine has? Maybe about 300,000, question mark.
It's probably around that ballpark figure, somewhere around 300,000, but considering the mobilization is probably gone up to around 400 to 500,000, or may even be higher than that. We don't have an exact figure, but we know that their pre-war figure for the army alone was around 270,000 soldiers. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from 9 Lives Spent. And I saw this question earlier, and I'm not sure if we've covered it before, but here we go. I'm not sure if you guys answered the question previously. Do you guys have any opinion or have heard about Ukrainian commanders neglecting or mismanaging the Foreign Legion?
We have heard about that. We have never gotten any video evidence to confirm these statements, but we did see it being published by the Kyiv Independent. And considering that the Kyiv Independent is our source of news that we use for casualty reports, and I trust them on that reporting, I by and large trust them on a lot of their reporting. And so apparently this is an issue that existed in the Foreign Legion. I don't know if it still exists, but considering the amount of publicity it got, I'm sure that something has been done to fix it. However, in case of y'all did not know, apparently there was some kind of a Polish thug that took control of the Foreign Legion unit, or at least a part of it, and started sending people on suicide missions and ordering them to loot houses. Hopefully that situation has been resolved, but of course, one thing I have to say is that that doesn't make the Ukrainians an evil force in this war. And usually propagandists always try and pick one bad thing and make it out to be the entirety of a nation's military. But with the Ukrainians, that is kind of an exception. Once again, everyone has to remember that while the Ukrainians are the right side in this war, there will always be a bad egg here and there in every single institution, and every single nation, and every single organization. And of course, it's just the job of the nation to root those people out and make sure that by and large, morality and I guess you could say goodwill is ensured. So with that, I hope that does answer the question. I have heard about it. It's just that we never really were able to report about it in full due to a lack of video evidence. But with that, we are on to the next one. I hope that answered the question fairly well.
And next up, we have a question from Richard Parnell, who says, Enforcer, what is the total output capacity of the reactors at Zaporizhia? Would it be enough to help the EU through the winter?
Let's see. Let's pull that up real quick and see. The Zaporizhia power plant produces 29,299 gigawatts as of 2016, but it does have a maximum output of 38,000 gigawatts. Now, that is compared to the Browns Ferry power plant, Browns Ferry nuclear plant. Let's see how many gigawatts this thing produces. This thing can produce, in 2017, it produced 27,848 gigawatts. Wow, that's crazy. With the Zaporizhia power plant having 6 nuclear reactors, it produced in 2016 as many gigawatts nearly as the Browns Ferry power plant did with only 3. Which is really interesting. But then again, the Browns Ferry power plant in 2017 was working at 96% capacity, and the Zaporizhia power plant was only working at 58.7% capacity. So with that in mind, it does have a massive amount of electrical output, but I don't think it's enough to help out the entirety of the European Union through the winter. It would take multiple Zaporizhia power plants to do something like that. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Lawrence Wells, who says, do you think the Ukraine should march the prisoners through Kyiv to put into the Russian orcs?
I think that they could probably put the prisoners on parade. Just in case you all don't know, that's actually kind of a common thing to do, is put prisoners on parade and show them off to the public, at least in prior wars through history. But I don't really know. I think wars have kind of changed in a way, and that would be looked at as somewhat distasteful. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe in a way it would be fine. I'm not really sure. I kind of have a mixed opinion on that right now. So with that, I'm gonna have to hold judgment on that one until a little bit later. And so we're gonna move on to the next one.
And next up, we have a question from Dakman555, who says, could this poor play be a ploy to draw out Ukrainian forces for a more conventional retaliating?
No. Once again, the Russians, it's not a viable strategy in war to lose massive amounts of ground and then claim that there will be an offensive soon. Ground lost is ground lost in war. It's usually not attached to any kind of a feint. And if there is ground lost for a feint, it's usually incredibly small, to the point that measuring it on a map isn't even reasonable. An area lost that's 50 miles deep, that's not at all the Russians preparing for some kind of a counterattack against that offensive. It's most likely the Russians just completely collapsing in that area and the Ukrainians blowing right through. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Anders Lisdorf, who says, when and how many more billions of dollars can we spend until Ukraine prevails in its war? What is our threshold? Today, $50 billion in total worldwide has been spent on Ukraine.
The answer to that question is there is no threshold. We spent $2 trillion in Afghanistan over 20 years. That is $1 trillion a decade that we would spend on Afghanistan. In fact, actually, I think that was Iraq's figure. I think Afghanistan was a little bit higher. How much did we spend in Afghanistan? How much did the U.S. spend in Afghanistan? That was in 2022. We can see that we just threw $204 million in March of 2022 at the Afghans. But let me see. How much did the U.S. spend in the Vietnam War? Wow, the Vietnam War only cost $1 trillion in today's money. That's actually kind of cheap. But let me... How much was the U.S. spending in Afghanistan per year? U.S. taxpayers have been giving Afghan soldiers a $750 million a year payroll the entire time we were there. The war cost the United States paying the Afghans. This wasn't even us. I'm assuming taking care of our own soldiers. It was just our aid to the Afghans. Ended up totaling something like $2.26 trillion, which was actually really close to my original estimate. And so considering that we spent that much money on Afghanistan, I don't think we really have a price ceiling on when we're going to say that the Ukraine war has gotten too rich for us. Because one thing that the United States does incredibly well is hand out money to everyone. It's pretty much the main thing that the United States does. A lot of people don't like it in the U.S., but at the same time, I don't think these people understand the position that the U.S. is in. If we don't do it, who will? There is no one else who can do it in our sphere of influence. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And I hope that answers the question fairly well.
And up next, we have a live chat question from Ambrogini Giusti, who says, would it be a good idea for the USA to give Ukraine Abrams tanks? Of course, with proper training.
I think it would be a fairly decent idea. We've already given the Iraqis a decent amount of M1 tanks. We've seen a decent amount of them get destroyed as well because they don't have the depleted uranium armor that a decent amount of American tanks have. But I think it would be a pretty good idea. The M1 Abrams are pretty modern, pretty competent, and I think it would do them fairly well as long as they, of course, got the proper training. So I would agree. That would be a pretty cool idea. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question. And we're going to answer 3 more questions from the live chat before we get off tonight. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Lankati69, who says, do you believe when Russia loses and has to bend to the West they will lose Kaliningrad?
I don't think so, because usually it's not the goal of modern countries to try and take ground or land from someone. That's a very rare thing that happens these days. So I think Kaliningrad would be left to the Russians. It's not really like it's a massive economic hub. It has a lot of potential. There's not really a lot that goes on in Kaliningrad. But with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Once again, take that one with a grain of salt because that's largely just my opinion. I'm not really based on any kind of facts or reasoning.
And real quick, to go over our poll, where would Putin flee if he was ousted? 36% said China, 4% said India, 10% said South America, and 50% said none of the above. Now, obviously, we're only allowed 4 choices on the polls. There were many other options that should have been on that list, but we are limited because of the limited options. But very interesting results. If I had to take a stab at it, I would say, personally, that he would go to China. But that's my thoughts. Enforcer, what are your thoughts?
I don't think he would end up going anywhere, really. In my opinion, I don't think anyone would have him or take him. And so he would just kind of end up stuck in Russia, and they would do something to him there. That's kind of what I'm thinking, but then again, I could be wrong. He could most likely flee to China out of those 3 options. And so with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this question goes to Dale Alaticus, who says, Enforcer, I was thinking it might be good to follow the orcs 20 miles into Russia to establish a buffer zone till end of war. What are your thoughts?
I think 100 miles into Russia?
20
miles into Russia. 20 miles, yeah. 20 miles would be pretty tough for the Ukrainians to do, especially across the entirety of the front line. That would be hundreds of miles. Actually, probably over thousands of square miles of land that they would be taking from the Russians in mainland Russia. And I'm not sure that would fare well with Russians. At that point, if they were losing that kind of land across the entire front, they would most likely start seriously threatening nuclear war to stop that kind of incursion, because they would almost be powerless at that point. So it's a decent idea, but at the same time, the repercussions that could come from it would be fairly dire, to the point that it may not make it worth it. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well. And we are on to the final question of the night. So who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Karen Vaughn, who says, what will happen in the Donbass? Isn't that where many dissidents live?
Many supposed dissidents live in the Donbass, but if the Ukrainians retake it, most likely nothing will happen. The separatists will most likely just dissipate into their normal lives again. The Ukrainians will reintegrate the area back into being Ukrainian, and by and large, I think things will return to normal there. If anything, I would view that much like the American Reconstruction after the Civil War, they'll just reintegrate the area. There'll probably be some sentiments left over, some after effects from the separatists that controlled the region for 8 years, but beyond that, it won't be anything too severe that the Ukrainians can't deal with. And so with that, I hope I answered that question fairly well, and it is the end of a 3-hour and 20-minute long stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching. If you did enjoy tonight's stream, please make sure to subscribe. And if you would like to help us to keep this channel running, please make sure to check out the Patreon. That helps me to keep this channel going and also helps me to focus on more videos in the future. You can find the link to that Patreon in the description below. And so with that, I thank you all so much once again for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the war in Ukraine on day 200. Thank you all once again, and I will see you all tomorrow.